If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 48, Revelation. In a moment of silent tension, Raymond and Zeno scrutinized each other with unwavering focus. He's able to sense their presence even when they're using Zetsu to conceal their aura. Raymond's eyes sharpened as his mind raced. Recalling how he had stumbled upon his subordinate's presence by chance, noticing subtle movements in the forest during their journey to the Zalik family estate, Raymond's apprehension deepened. His familiarity with these signs allowed him to piece together the puzzle, and Sakujiro's reaction confirmed his suspicions. "It appears I've underestimated them," Raymond admitted to himself, acknowledging the gravity of the situation, especially when he realized that besides Zeno, Raymond could sense another formidable aura focusing on him when he activated his eyes. Meanwhile, Silva's brow furrowed as he glanced at his wrist, sensing a malevolent nin still clinging to his own as if attempting to consume him. This was the very reason why he had lost control of his orbs earlier. The intrusive nin had disrupted the flow within them. With a deep breath, Silva circulated his own nin, allowing a surge of energy to emanate from his hand before releasing it into the air as he swiftly cut off its connection with him. However, the moment his nin lost its connection, Raymond's nin swiftly engulfed it before effortlessly overpowering Silva's nin and settling back into a serene state. "Such a dangerous nin," Zeno remarked, shaking his head in awe as he redirected his gaze towards Raymond. A sense of nostalgia washed over him as he detected a familiar aura reminiscent of Netero's pure martial arts aura emanating from the young man. To think that such a young man would be able to overpower Silva. Zeno's expression flickered with a mix of fear and astonishment. He was both awed by the young man's prowess and terrified since Zeno understood that the young man in front of him still had plenty of time to grow stronger. Still, seeing Raymond made Zeno think of his grandson, Killua. Killua was undeniably the most promising member of their family. Since Zeno could see Raymond was also talented as well, he couldn't help but feel anticipation for Killua's growth. Zeno couldn't help but feel quite excited to see his growth as he could see Raymond was a talented young man. Our Killua will surpass him, Zeno thought with pride, envisioning the future achievements of his grandson. As he watched the young man before him, Zeno couldn't shake the belief that Killua would eventually outshine even Raymond. "Tell me, young man. What do you want from us?" Zeno's voice was firm as he approached Raymond, stopping just a few paces away. Raymond shrugged nonchalantly, "Simple. Illumi took out one of my top men. I couldn't retrieve his hand during the hunter exam, so I thought I'd pay a visit to get it." Silence fell over the place as Zeno's eyes sparked with a knowing glance at Raymond's words. Zeno vanished from sight without uttering a single word, reappearing beside Illumi in a flash. And with a swift motion, he slashed Illumi's left hand, then just as quickly returned to stand before Raymond. Silence enveloped the scene as Illumi remained impassive despite the loss of his arm. Internally, however, his thoughts raced. Does Grandpa recognize him? Oh! Raymond seized Illumi's thrown arm with intrigue as a sly smirk formed on his face. "Finally found someone who speaks my language in the Zalik. Have you concluded your business?" Zeno paid no heed to Raymond's words, repeating his question. Simultaneously, he channeled his nin as a formidable pressure gradually radiating from his body. "Sure thing," Raymond dismissed Zeno's attempt at intimidation with a shake of his head. He could tell Zeno was trying to tell him that if provoked, he wouldn't shy away from a conflict. "I'll take it as nothing ever happened between us then." Casually discarding Illumi's arms to the ground, Raymond signaled for Sakujiro to depart, strolling away leisurely. Sakujiro nodded and took Raymond's blazer, while every member of the Zalik family kept a vigilant eye on their departing figures. "By the way, it's only fair for me to introduce myself, I suppose." Raymond abruptly turned, causing an uneasy tension to ripple through everyone present. With a chuckle, he observed their adorable reactions before introducing himself. "I am Raymond. Celestia." The mention of the name caused both Zeno and Silva to tense, their pupils widening in surprise. Without hesitation, Silva vanished from sight, reappearing in front of Raymond with a swift kick aimed at his neck. Gasps echoed through the onlookers as the situation escalated unexpectedly. But just as tension peaked, a sudden chill descended. And Sakujiro's figure unexpectedly materialized between them with ice encasing his dagger as he intercepted Silva's attack. With a well-placed kick, he sent Silva hurtling backward, crashing into the ground. "Ice, hey? As expected, you're that guy from Meteor City." Silva's hand dripped with blood as he struggled to rise, half of his body encased in ice. He looked at the ice covering his body with nonchalance as he took a deep breath before forcing his muscles to flex, shattering the icy prison that bound him. Sekujiro remained silent as he twirled his dagger in his hand. His eyes remained locked on Sylva's while still wary of the other's presence as the surrounding air grew colder by the moment. Enough! Zeno's voice boomed as a powerful pressure surge radiated from him. Sylva just frowned in response as Sekujiro remained vigilant. I thought we settled our business here? What was that about? Raymond's voice reverberated across the scene, drawing Sylva's sharp gaze. After you forced us out of business in the country, you have the nerve to ask. Sylva's response was filled with disdain. You're still getting commissions from abroad, aren't you? Don't be petty, Raymond countered, a chuckle escaping him. Sylva grumbled in frustration, clenching his fists to regain his composure, mindful of Zeno's scrutinizing gaze. Zeno shook his head in disbelief as he shifted his attention to Raymond. He hadn't anticipated that the mastermind behind the Celestia consortium would be so young. For so long, the name had no face, as everyone only knew Raymond's name without knowing what he looked like. No wonder he outwitted the chairman in a chess match, he mused silently. Despite his discontent with the consortium for monitoring their activities and essentially eradicating their assassination missions in the country, Zeno couldn't deny the extent of Raymond's influence, which was too crucial to overlook. And to think that such a person suddenly revealed himself to the world. Storm is brewing indeed, Zeno thought as he felt a chill run down his spine. Chapter 52, Chapter 49, Conclusion. Raymond shook his head in response to the unexpected reaction from the Zalik patriarch. Yet, he could understand it. After all, he had effectively disrupted their assassination operations within the country, depriving them of significant commissions over the years. Not that I'm feeling sorry about it. Raymond chuckled, finding the situation rather amusing. In a republican country, the correlation between wealth, influence, and political power was undeniable. With each increase in wealth and influence, Raymond's political clout also grew stronger. During political campaigns, even for the presidency, candidates sought his sponsorship due to the immense funds required for their campaigns. In exchange for his support, they owed him favors. While they appeared to cooperate on the surface, in reality, those in power could only lower their heads to him and seek his favor. The Celestia consortium's significance to the country's economy had become indispensable, solidifying Raymond's position of influence and power. As the Celestia consortium extended its reach into the media industry, those in positions of power began to realize their dependence on Raymond's organization. With the media firmly under his control, Raymond wielded immense power over the flow of information throughout the country. Moreover, Raymond had cast a vast network of information across the globe through the slums, streets, and bars which were controlled by the Celestial Force. This allowed him to manipulate information as needed and shield key figures within his company, such as Luke and Tatiana, from scrutiny. Using this newfound authority, Raymond swiftly halted commissions directed toward the Zalik family within the country. It was a safety measure, considering that all major players within the Celestia consortium resided in the Republic of Padokia. The reasoning was simple. The country had become their stronghold, and by controlling the flow of information, Raymond ensured that his influence remained unchallenged. I suppose you won't attack me anymore, right? Raymond uttered with a shake of his head as his eyes dimmed and deactivated his ability, signaling an end to the confrontation. Sekujiro exchanged a final glance with the Zaldiks before trailing behind Raymond, his senses still vigilant. Sylva and Zeno remained silent, their gazes fixed on Raymond's retreating form as he faded into the distance, leaving their estate behind. Father, if we both joined hands, we should be able to kill him, Sylva suggested, observing Raymond's fading figure. Zeno shook his head in response, gesturing toward Raymond's lingering Nen aura. His Nen itself was quite dangerous, and given his character, do you believe he has revealed his full strength? Sylva's expression tightened at the realization as the others around them approached, their concern palpable. Having faced off against Raymond, Sylva had gained some insight into the young man's character through their fierce exchange. Raymond's audacious tactics, like intentionally slowing his pace to land a hit, were crazy enough. Sylva could see that Raymond was both cunning and crazy. I suppose it's likely he kept some tricks up his sleeve. He nodded in agreement with Zeno's remark. Husband, your injury. Killua worriedly spoke as she looked at Sylva's bleeding arm and the dried blood in his mouth. Sylva waved off her worry, assuring her, I'm fine. Rather than dwelling on his wounds, he turned to Illumi and instructed, grab your hand and find someone to reattach it to your arm. Understood. Illumi nodded in agreement before swiftly disappearing with his severed hand to keep it in pristine condition so he could attach it back to his arm. Stop accepting contracts involving anyone tied to Celestia Consortium, no matter what. Zeno's command echoed with authority. After a brief silence, he also added, before accepting any assignment, thoroughly assess the target's background. That goes against our assassin's code, father. It's not feasible. Silva's expression darkened as he objected. It's better this way since our survival is at risk, Zeno stated firmly, meeting Silva's gaze with intensity. Seeing that Silva seemed to be unconvinced, he shook his head. Do you understand why he participated in the hunter exam, where he could have easily killed Illumi but didn't? Zeno asked the question, his tone carrying a thoughtful tone. Silva remained silent, deep in thought. It was his way of extending a notice that he's coming for a visit. Today, he has visited us. And do you understand the significance of his request for Illumi's left hand? Zeno continued, his gaze shifting to the sky as he let out a sigh. It was a test to see if we comprehend his intentions, a test you've failed miserably. Silva felt slightly speechless as it had been such a long time since the last time his own father had berated him. But he remained attentive, knowing there was more to be said. Then he unveiled himself as the mastermind behind Celestia Consortium. Zeno's voice carried a sharp edge, his gaze piercing. With purposeful strides, Zeno continued, by doing so, he made it clear that any interference with his affairs would lead to war. Zeno understood Raymond's restraint. Escalating the conflict would draw the attention of the Hunter Association, something neither party desired. Zeno contemplated silently, realizing that Raymond was avoiding sparking a civil war. He understood the implications. If the Zalik family clashed openly with the Celestia Consortium, it could escalate into a broader conflict involving the Hunter Association. But don't you think we've stooped too low by bowing down like this? We're Zaldiks. We don't cower before anyone. Miluki interjected childishly, earning a swift reprimand from Kikyo. Ignoring Miluki's outburst, Zeno pressed on with a solemn tone, and, more importantly, that young man. He has an army. Zeno would pay no heed if it was just an ordinary army, knowing they could handle them easily. But Zeno recognized that this was no ordinary force. From their overwhelming presence and skillful use of Zetsu, he could tell they were well versed in Nin. Shaking his head, he thought, no wonder the Hunter Association kept an eye on them. And Zeno was certain that the force surrounding them wasn't everything since the Celestia Consortium was far too vast for only this amount of people. It looks like the chairman underestimated him, Zeno mused to himself, fading into the background as he pondered further. That young man got more tricks up his sleeve than we thought. Silence fell over the group at Zeno's words, and Silva nodded in agreement, understanding the situation. Understood, I'll see what I can do. Though Silva was still a bit displeased since he himself didn't see any other alternatives at the moment, he could only comply for now. Chapter 53, Chapter 50, Soon to be Mine. In the dim underground chamber, filled with creepy tools of torture. The room felt sinister, with rusty gadgets and sharp objects lining the walls. At the end of the chamber, Killua hung from chains, his wrists and feet tightly bound. He glanced around, looking bored and a bit annoyed. Where's Miluki off to now? Killua muttered to himself, his voice echoing softly in the eerie silence. He'd felt a shake in the chamber earlier, and then suddenly, his brother had practically run off and left him alone in this creepy place. As minutes ticked by, Killua's impatience grew. He shifted his weight, eyeing the chains that held him with a sense of frustration. Should he try to break free? It seemed like his only option as Miluki showed no signs of returning anytime soon. His punishment was not yet over, and Miluki still needed to whip him a few hundred times more. Enough waiting around, Killua muttered. He knew what needed to be done. With a casual flick of his wrist, Killua tightened his fist, the chain binding his wrist giving way with surprising ease. Clang! The metallic clang of the broken restraint echoed in the chamber. As one of his hands was now free, Killua swung his other arm forward. The force of his movement shattered the remaining chain with a satisfying crack. And with no more binding his upper body, his figure descended to the ground with a swift motion as he regained his footing. Looking down at his chained ankles, Killua just casually stomped his foot. Clang! This shattered the chains around his ankles as the sound of breaking metal echoed through the chamber. Erg! That feels good. He stretched his body, a satisfying crack resonating through the air as he let out a satisfied sigh. Now, time to drag Miluki back to the chamber. He decided to find Miluki and get this punishment over with as quickly as possible. With an annoyed stride, he moved towards the exit, his determination driving him forward. With the room behind him, Killua set off through the underground tunnel, his footsteps echoing in the darkness. At the guard post outside the estate, Gon and the others waited anxiously, their eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. Suddenly, they saw familiar figures coming out, and relief washed over them. Raymond! Gon said happily, running up to his friend. Kurapika and Leorio joined him, looking worried but glad to see Raymond. As they gathered around Raymond, Kurapika couldn't help but notice the dried blood on the corner of his mouth. What happened, Raymond? Oh, nothing much, he replied casually. Just had a little chat with the Zalik family, that's all. His words hung in the air, leaving Gon and the others stunned. Everyone looked at Raymond, surprised and curious. It seemed like Raymond had faced something serious, but things seemed all right. Leorio furrowed his brow. He was skeptical as he shook his head. He recalled every time they met, Raymond seemed to end in chaos fights, destruction, or both. I highly doubt that, Leorio muttered loud enough for Gon and Kurapika to hear. They looked at each other and exchanged wry smiles. On the side, Zebro observed Raymond with a mixture of shock and confusion. How was it possible that this troublemaker was still standing before them? His confusion deepened when he noticed Raymond's torn blazer in Sakujiro's hand, a clear sign of conflict between them and the Zalik family. Unable to fully comprehend the situation, Zebro tentatively spoke up, Have you finished your business here, esteemed guest? Actually. Raymond grinned at the kids and continued, I wish I could stay longer, but my business here is over, and I have some important stuff to do. And Gon, I'm sorry I made you wait to meet Killua. He turned to Gon and handed him a fancy black card with Celestia Consortium written in gold. Raymond handed it to Gon with a serious expression, consider this my way of making it up to you. What's this, Raymond? Gon accepted the card, examining it with curiosity. He was puzzled by the heavy card with shiny letters since he had never seen one quite like this. It's a special card. You can use it to enjoy free services from any companies under the Celestia Consortium for free, Raymond explained. Kurapika's eyes widened, you? Raymond, who are you really? Me? Raymond chuckled, making his way towards the waiting car where Sakujiro held the door open for him. I'm just someone who happens to own the company. Anyway, it's been nice meeting you all. Take care, Raymond called out with a wave as he stepped into the car. Kurapika's jaw dropped in shock as Raymond's voice faded away with the sound of the car driving off. Kurapika, do you know about the card or something? Leorio was puzzled as he scratched his head while looking at the card in Gon's hand that didn't look noticeable besides the gold name of the company. You have no idea, Kurapika slowly responded as he was still a bit shaken. As the car descended the mountain, Raymond gazed pensively out the window, tapping his finger rhythmically on the armrest. The encounter with the Zalik family had left a strong impression on him. I underestimated them, he admitted to himself quietly. I thought our forces were enough to wipe them all at once, but I was wrong. Despite his confidence, Raymond knew engaging in a battle with the Zaliks would be disastrous for both sides regardless of the outcome unless a weapon of mass destruction was used. He shook his head before looking at the rear mirror as he noticed Sakujiro had been constantly stealing glances at him. You got a question? Raymond asked, turning his attention to Sakujiro. Sakujiro hesitated before admitting, yes, master. I'm still puzzled why you always go to such lengths to avoid conflict with the Hunter Association. First of all, if I do it this way, I can make sure they won't take on any job related to us. Raymond leaned back, his eyes narrowing in thought. How can you be so sure of that? Raymond shook his head, his gaze fixed on the passing scenery outside. That old man understands my language and is quite cooperative. He knows what to do. As for the association. A sly smirk crept across Raymond's face, sending a shiver down Sakujiro's spine. Why would I want to harm something that will eventually become mine? Chapter 54, Chapter 51, Reunion. As Killua's figure slowly emerged from the underground tunnel, he extended his senses, scanning the area ahead as his eyes gleamed while he looked in the direction of the main gate. With a swift movement, Killua vanished from sight, his figure melding seamlessly into the shadows. After moving through the forest to where he felt a lot of presence Killua's eyes widened in disbelief at the sight before him. What just happened? Killua wondered, raising his eyebrows in surprise as he saw the destroyed forest ahead. The trees were smashed and the ground looked like it had been hit by a big fight. There were broken branches everywhere and big holes in the ground. Smoke lingered in the air from the intense battle that had taken place. Killua's heart raced as he tried to make sense of the chaos. Who could have caused such destruction, and why? Kill. What the heck are you doing here? You were supposed to stay underground. Miluki's voice boomed with anger as he spotted Killua approaching. Silva shot a glance at Killua before giving orders to the servants, send out scouts to sweep the mountain. Make sure those people are gone for good. Gota nodded, and with a hand signal, the servants sprang into action. They vanished into the shadows, swiftly moving to scout the mountain as instructed. Dad, what happened? Did you get into a fight with Grandpa or something? Ignoring Miluki's outburst, Killua hurried toward his father, noting the injuries Silva had sustained. Before Silva could respond, Miluki intervened, his face red with rage. You! Miluki pointing his chubby finger at Killua, how dare you ignore your big brother? Whatever! Killua merely yawned in response. Seeing this prompted Miluki's anger to burst out as he charged at Killua. Killua just clicked his tongue annoyedly as he sidestepped. With a swift movement, Killua delivered a light kick to Miluki's ankle, sending him tumbling to the ground with a resounding thud, his face meeting the earth with a jolt. Kikyo frowned disapprovingly at Miluki with her stern gaze. On her side, Kalito appeared to be amused, his eyes twinkling with delight. You moth! Miluki attempted to fight back, but before he could finish, a loud smack echoed through the air, sending his face crashing back to the ground. Miluki, stop causing trouble! Kikyo scolded, her voice sharp with reprimand. Miluki rubbed his sore head where his mother's slap had landed, but, Mama! I said stop it! Kikyo huffed in frustration, cutting off his protests. I got it, Mama! Miluki's eyes burned with fury as he gazed at Killua's figure as he felt wronged by the situation. Kikyo clicked her tongue disapprovingly before turning her gaze to Killua with a tender expression. Killua, my dear, you shouldn't be here. Don't you still have your punishment to complete? That's exactly why I'm here. I need to take Miluki back to finish it quickly, Killua replied, irritation evident in his tone. He then turned to his father, ignoring his mother and Miluki's presence, and asked, Father, what happened? You don't need to worry about this, Silva replied, shaking his head and brushing off his family's antics. Miluki was nursing his bruised ego after being scolded and smacked once more as he lowered his head and scratched it sheepishly. Turning to Killua, he sneered, you should thank me for leaving you in the chamber, or else you'd have been shitting pants. We almost went to war with the person running Celestia Consortium. Raymond Celestia himself. Miluki's voice held a hint of admiration as he recounted the close encounter. Miluki's tone was tinged with awe as he recalled the intense confrontation. Despite their differences, Miluki couldn't deny his admiration for the games produced by one of Celestia Consortium's companies. You be hard. He was well aware that some of the most popular games were designed by none other than Raymond Celestia himself, which was why he couldn't help but admired him for giving him such a great gaming experience. Miluki's clear tone of admiration for Raymond, the same person he had cursed during the confrontation earlier, prompted Kalito to shoot him a look of disgust. Raymond! Killua exclaimed, his eyes widening in surprise at the unexpected name drop. Do you know him? Silva's eyes gleamed with a fierce light, urging Killua to respond. Scratching his head awkwardly, Killua avoided eye contact. I'm not sure if we're thinking of the same Raymond, but I met this guy who was pretty cool. He could cook and even defeated Illumi during the hunter exam not too long ago. Silva's expression shifted, his surprise evident. His features hardened as he processed the information. Consider your punishment finished, Kill. Meet me in my private room later. I want to hear all the details. Turning to Miluki, he instructed him to go about his own business as he started to walk back toward their residence. Miluki, Kill's punishment was over. Go continue to do your own thing. All right, Papa. Miluki was about to protest, but the intense gleam in Silva's eyes silenced him, prompting him to comply with the order. Silva paused as he prepared to leave with his family, his attention caught by something unexpected. Everyone turned in unison, their surprise evident as they sensed several presences gradually revealing themselves. It was Gon, Kurapika, Leorio, and Zebro. Killua. Gon. Gon and Killua blinked in mutual surprise at the unexpected encounter. Gon. Killua. The two friends called out to each other, their voices filled with excitement as they ran towards each other, just like children eager to reunite with their playmates. When did you come here? A few weeks ago. Whoa! Did you open the testing gate? They jumped around in joy as they closed the distance between them. Kurapika and Leorio exchanged wary glances with Silva and the other Zalik family members before turning their attention back to Gon and Killua, as smiles slowly formed in their faces. It seemed that Gon and the others had managed to open the testing gate after Raymond's departure. Approaching Silva respectfully, Zebro bowed before providing a recount of recent events and explaining the identity of their unexpected guest. Silva nodded in understanding, his expression thoughtful as he listened attentively to Zebro's report. Inform the servants to accommodate Killua's friends properly. Turning his gaze towards Gon and the others, he regarded them silently for a moment before addressing Zebro. Killua was visibly annoyed by the presence of Gon and the others. She tightened her grip on her dress, seemingly trying to hold herself back on jumping at them. Let's return home. But Silva's decision was final. Continuing their stride, the rest of the Zalik family slowly vanished into the thick fog, retreating back to their residence and leaving Killua and his friends to fend for themselves. Chapter 55, Chapter 52, To the Heavens Arena. After their brief reunion, Gon and the others were instructed to wait in the guest room, which resembled a miniature villa. They couldn't help but feel a bit surprised that it wasn't the main house they were led to. I spent some time in Heaven's Arena since I have no money on me. Meanwhile, Killua found himself in his father's private room, accompanied by Silva and his grandfather. He recounted his adventures from the moment he left home to escape up until the end of the hunter exam which he failed. Silva observed with a small smile playing on his lips as Killua animatedly recounted his stories. On the other hand, Zeno remained calm and composed, twirling his mustache thoughtfully as he listened intently. After recounting his adventures, Killua concluded his story. Silva gazed at his son with a hint of seriousness in his eyes, advising him to cherish his friends before instructing him to play the role of a gracious host for them. I know, Dad. Don't worry about that. Excitedly nodding in agreement, Killua hurried off to join his friends. As Killua left, the atmosphere in the room shifted back to its usual nonchalance. Zeno spoke up, breaking the silence, do you see now? Are you convinced? Yes, Silva remained silent for a moment before responding. Recalling Killua's meeting with Raymond and seeing the guy's character through his son's story, Silva couldn't help but feel a bit surprised. Raymond's lack of hostility, aside from beating up Illumi, had caught Silva off guard. Given that he wasn't hostile, to begin with, I'll make an exception this time. Silva muttered, contemplating his decision. Despite agreeing to Zeno's order to cease any commissions related to Celestia Consortium earlier, Silva struggled with the decision, knowing it went against their assassin's code of conduct. But now, he felt less reluctant than before. Now that the issue is resolved, I'll take my leave to rest, Zeno declared, rising from his seat and leaving Silva deep in thought. With everything settled at the Zalik estate and Killua back by his side, Gon made the decision to continue his adventure. However, Kurapika and Leorio decided to go their separate ways, each pursuing their own goals. While Gon felt a pang of sadness at their departure, he understood and could only offer his support, wishing them success in their endeavors. Together with Killua, both of them decided their next destination would be Heaven's Arena. Why the Heaven's Arena, you ask? Simple. They were broke. Little did Gon know, the card Raymond had bestowed upon him granted him access to a lifetime of free enjoyment across the vast and diverse companies under the Celestia Consortium. Money should be the last thing he should be worried about. But Gon wasn't aware of the immense scale and variety of businesses owned by the Celestia Consortium. He didn't have much knowledge about it, so he didn't realize the full extent of what the card could offer him. Since Raymond's visit to the Zalik estate, a few weeks had passed, and he found himself seated in his office, his finger tapping against the armrest as usual. However, there was a noticeable change from the usual silence he was accustomed to. Now, the room was filled with the delightful sound of a baby's giggles. Seated on the sofa, Luke wore a depressed expression. He clenched his teeth in frustration as he watched his baby daughter, Ava, having the time of her life, clinging tightly to Raymond's head and playing with his hair, even though Raymond hadn't done anything to entertain her. Ray. Luke's eyes narrowed at the sound, shooting Raymond a hateful glare. Despite his efforts to be the funniest dad, Ava had never laughed so joyfully with him. Her delightful laughter and giggles now seemed reserved exclusively for Raymond. Sakujiro remained silent, shaking his head in response to the scene before him. Are you absolutely sure about this? Raymond asked as he lightly glanced at the file containing confidential information on his desk and raised a hand above his head. This immediately triggered adorable giggles from Ava as she started playing with his finger. Sekujiro nodded in affirmation, yes, we've been keeping a close eye on them ever since you mentioned they could throw a wrench in our plans. Raymond fell into a pensive silence, closing his eyes momentarily before lowering his hand and returning to tapping his armrest. Sekujiro bowed slightly as he stepped back, understanding that his master was contemplating their next course of action. They were discussing a notorious band of thieves with A-class bounties on their heads, Phantom Troop. Raymond had carefully orchestrated his plan, using the now-deceased Albert as a decoy to gain influence in your new city. He anticipated that Phantom Troop would disrupt the annual auction held in the city, which could jeopardize his interests if Albert succeeded in gaining power. Unfortunately, Illumi's assassination of Albert threw a wrench into their plans, causing them to lose significant influence in the city's underworld power struggle. To make matters worse, the annual auction got called off, causing the Phantom Troop members to continue scattering across the continent, which seemed like a stroke of luck for them. But the problem was that the auction cancellation was just a ruse. It was still on but by invitation only. Ray. But Ava interrupted, noticing that the hand she was playing with had been taken away. Baba. She shook Raymond's head as if asking him to return her playmate. Raymond chuckled at the sight, his eyes sparkling with mischief as he quickly extended his hand back to Ava. Hee hee. She giggled happily, resuming her playful antics. However, the moment Ava reclaimed his hand, Raymond's eyes lit up with a cunning glint as if he had just figured something out. He had been considering this option for a while now, especially since their efforts to gain more influence had hit a wall with the 10 Dons keeping a close eye on their activity in the city. And their hands were tied since the 10 Dons knew very well that the Celestia consortium wouldn't dare to show themselves to be the one behind the scene. That's right. Ava, you're a genius. Considering we lost some influence there, why not even the odds? Right, Ava. Raymond's face lit up with a smirk as he lifted Ava onto his arm, his words accompanied by a playful gesture. Baba. Ava raised her tiny fist in agreement, sparking a chuckle from Raymond. His eyes twinkled with cunning light as he silently pondered, let's guide these mischievous thieves back to where they belong, shall we? Coincidentally, Raymond happened to have a clown indebted to him. I didn't originally plan to use it for this, but I suppose it's the perfect opportunity. Ray. He couldn't resist flashing a wide smirk, which looked rather funny in Ava's eyes, prompting her to giggle and mimic his expression. Luke's expression turned pale at the sight, and he exclaimed, No, Ava. Don't imitate that wicked expression. Chapter 56, Chapter 53, A Weakling. Hey, guys, there will only be one chapter today. I've been quite busy lately, I hope you understand. Thanks. It had been a few days since Raymond decided to tweak his plan slightly, and now he found himself standing before the towering structure of the Heavens Arena. The area in front of the arena was bustling with activity, filled with people in black suits and sunglasses who seemed to be securing the area for a VIP. All eyes turned to Raymond, who stood at the center of it all with curiosity. Who is he? I don't know, probably a rich heir or something. Despite the unusually long line today. Welcome, Master. Among the first few hundred in line were all his people. With a chuckle, he made his way towards the registration booth. Hello, how can I assist you? The booth lady asked with excitement as Raymond responded, I registered a while back. I'd like to step into the ring again. Oh? What was your name again? Raymond. I remember using just my first name back then, Raymond replied. She nodded and entered his name in the Heavens Arena system. However, her eyes immediately widened, and she turned to Raymond with a look of shock. Oh? You recognize me? Yes, I've heard of you before. You've got 9 wins on the 200th floor already, and we're still counting them, given your unique situation. They had to alter a certain rule because of the man standing in front of her, so of course she knew who he was. She glanced at the special note under his file, confirming that his wins were still valid. So, if you're up for it, you'll need to head straight to the 200th floor to continue fighting. Are you okay with that? Sure thing, that makes things convenient. Raymond nodded, noticing the clerk visibly relax, which made him chuckle. All right, please wait a moment. We'll have someone guide you to the 200th floor. You can register for a fight there. Another staff member approached and gestured for Raymond to follow her, leading him to the 200th floor after he told his men to stay there. Arriving at the familiar, lengthy corridor, Raymond couldn't help but smile slightly as he followed the staff member to the registration booth on the 200th floor. There, he found another clerk with sleepy eyes who nodded in acknowledgement as she turned to him. "I heard about your situation from my colleague. Would you like to immediately sign up for a fight? Just keep in mind, you only need one more win to challenge the floor masters." "I see, sure, I'll register myself. And would it be possible to use my full name this time?" "It's Raymond Celestia." "Sure thing, Raymond Celestia it is." The sleepy clerk replied with a nod, making the adjustment without even questioning it. Raymond's eyes sparkled with cunning light at this development. With his 10th win approaching, his name would undoubtedly catch the attention of the 10 Dons, who had been eager to uncover the face and identity of the mastermind behind the Celestia Consortium. "Well, currently we don't have anyone else signed up for a match, so you might have to wait a bit until another fighter registers. Are you alright with that?" Raymond nodded in agreement. "Yeah, sir. I'll sign up then," a voice interrupted his sentence. Raymond turned to see a man wearing a red robe and a conical hat, with a breathing mask and a metal prosthetic peg leg. "Perfect timing!" the clerk exclaimed with her still sleepy eyes and tired face as if trying to sound excited. She then turned to Raymond, "Would you mind facing off against fighter Gido?" Raymond simply nodded in response, and the clerk swiftly registered their fight to be scheduled soon. "All right, your match is set for tomorrow. Be sure to arrive at least half an hour early," she instructed, addressing both Raymond and Gido, who nodded in agreement. "Are you new around here?" Gido suddenly asked. Raymond shook his head, "Not really." Gido's eyes gleamed with excitement behind his mask. He had been hoping for an easy win, and now he spotted Raymond registering for a fight. He quietly observed this new face, silently assessing him from the sideline. Quietly observing the newcomer, Gido took in Raymond's attire, which seemed more suited for a businessman than a martial artist or fighter. Based on appearances alone, Gido assumed Raymond wouldn't be much of a challenge. "Well, then you're in luck. For your first fight, I'll go easy on you," Gido said, his voice tinged with amusement beneath his mask. Raymond's response that he wasn't entirely new led Gido to assume he had been in the arena for quite some time before he made it to the 200th floor. He took quite a while to get here, so he can't be that tough, Gido thought, a spark of happiness twinkling in his eyes. He couldn't help but feel a surge of delight, thinking his guess about Raymond being a lightweight might be right on the mark. "Oh, really? You'll go easy on me? That's very kind of you." "I appreciate it," Raymond replied with a warm smile, his words dripping with sincerity. "Good, that's how you should be responding to my favor." Gido couldn't help but feel a sense of smug satisfaction at Raymond's response. Little did Gido know, Raymond's eyes weren't even smiling along with his lips. "Well, then, good luck in your preparation, newbie." Gido spoke as he slowly made his way toward his room in slow steps with his metal prosthetic peg leg. Raymond watched in silence as Gido sauntered away, disappearing into the long corridor. Shaking his head, Raymond's expression reverted to its usual nonchalant demeanor as he stepped into the lift, heading back to the ground floor. Emerging from the lift, Raymond arched an eyebrow as he spotted Sekujiro among the crowd with his men around him like how a loyal subordinate should. They quickly secured the area, respectfully bowing as Sekujiro approached Raymond. "How did it go?" Raymond inquired, knowing Sekujiro had been personally training Sin, whose abilities they would soon require. For the past few days, Sekujiro had been rarely seen and only showing up for crucial reports that required his personal attention. With a rare small smile softening his typically stoic expression, Sekujiro nodded, "We've made it. Though, he can only make it last for about 10 minutes if he pushes himself to the limit, but its range is already within your requirements." I see. 10 minutes should enough, don't worry." Raymond responded with a satisfied smile. Sekujiro then led him towards the car as Raymond prepared to tackle the rest of his busy day, with a string of meetings awaiting him. Chapter 57, Chapter 54, 10th Wins. The next day, the arena on the 200th floor buzzed with excitement as spectators gathered to witness the showdown between Raymond and Gido. "Hey, Gido's up. He always picks on the weaklings, but I'm here for the flashy moves." "Who's he fighting against?" "Probably some newbie." Many had flocked to see Gido, a familiar figure among the fighters on the 200th floor. On the other hand, Raymond was a bit of a mystery to many. His debut had been ages ago, and the crowd had changed since then. While some might have heard tales of his past exploits, most didn't even know what Raymond looked like. Ladies and gentlemen, brace yourselves for a thrilling match. Introducing the master of the dancing tops, the one and only Gido. Gido gracefully entered the stage, basking in the cheers of the crowd as he strutted towards the arena. And facing off against him, Raymond emerged slowly as the announcer boomed, the one and only Raymond Celestia. As the announcer uttered Raymond's full name, a few faces in the crowd widened in surprise. However, most shrugged it off, thinking his name was just similar to a legend from years past. Yet, amidst the spectators, one man couldn't contain his astonishment. With a shocked expression, he rose from his seat and slipped away from the crowd. Little did he know, Sekujiro was among the bustling crowd as he keenly observed the man's every action. Softly, he spoke into a communication device nestled in his ear, ensure he reports master's existence to his superior first before taking action. Roger that. No, never mind, I'll take care of him myself. A swift reply echoed through the device, prompting a cold glint in Sekujiro's eyes as he muttered, blood will flow freely before the day is done. He's no stranger to the heavens arena. Took a little break for some me time, but now he's back with a bang. The announcer's lively voice stirred up the crowd even more, and their excitement went up by a notch as both fighters entered the arena. Cheers filled the air as Raymond and Gido stepped onto the stage. The crowd's enthusiasm was quite clear to see, reverberating off the walls with each resounding cheer. Quite a nostalgic experience, Raymond muttered as he looked at the excited crowd. On the other hand, Gido wore a cocky smirk as he locked eyes with Raymond. He relished the attention of the crowd, basking in their adoration. He then looked at Raymond, who was observing the arena, as if taking in every detail for the first time. Gido leaned in to reassure him, relax, buddy. The crowd's usually pretty chill during my matches. Inwardly, he couldn't help but scoff at Raymond's reaction. Looks like we've got ourselves a newbie here. Wait until he sees the rowdy crowds in some other fights. Gido mused to himself, observing Raymond's chuckling in response. Raymond looked at Gido with a hint of amusement as he spoke, well, it's been such a long time since the last time I've been in such a crowd, fighting. Gido couldn't understand what Raymond was saying, but his opinion of Raymond remained solid as he nodded, you're quick to adapt, hey? That's good. But don't expect me to take it easy. I'm here to win. He was grinning widely beneath his face as Raymond's face remained the same. In the bustling crowd, a man with tousled black hair and glasses observed Raymond intently, his expression serious. That fighter seems formidable, Wing murmured to himself. While he didn't know much about Raymond, Wing could sense a certain aura emanating from him that reminded Wing of the martial arts masters he had encountered before. Across the bustling crowd, a particular clown rose to his feet at the sight of Raymond. There he is. Hisoka's mind buzzed with excitement. Sensing Raymond's gaze on him moments ago sent a rush of adrenaline through Hisoka. He couldn't help but chuckle, Kakik, so he's come to me, just as he promised. Though Hisoka knew if Raymond truly came to him, that only meant Raymond was going to ask him to pay back the favor he gave during the hunter exam. But we gotta fight first, Kakik. Hisoka laughed even louder as he tried his best to stop himself from jumping right at Raymond immediately. The referee positioned himself between the fighters, signaling for them to prepare. With a swift motion, he raised his hand and exclaimed, let the battle begin. Gido wasted no time, activating his nin and taking out his signature dancing tops. The announcer's voice rang out with excitement, declaring, here come Gido's dancing tops. Brace yourself. With a smirk, Gido sent his spinning tops hurtling towards Raymond. Raymond merely glanced at the swirling tops around him before refocusing his attention on Gido, taking deliberate steps forward. Oh! Raymond's moving in. Will Gido allow this? The announcer's excitement was palpable. Obviously, he won't. Gido's eyes sparkled with determination as the dancing tops collided with each other before hurtling towards Raymond's back with impressive speed. Yet, to Gido's amazement, Raymond effortlessly sidestepped the attack, continuing his advance. What a move! Raymond dodges with ease. The announcer's astonishment mirrored Gido's thoughts, was it just luck? Still, Gido was a cautious person. Despite feeling doubtful, he swiftly retrieved another set of dancing tops, doubling their number before launching them as a backup. The crowd erupted with excitement, energized by the escalating spectacle. 30 dancing tops whirled around Raymond, colliding and converging on his position. But to Gido's dismay, Raymond effortlessly dodged every incoming attack, his movements appearing almost nonchalant in the face of the onslaught. Is that the best you can do? Raymond's calm voice cut through the chaos, jolting Gido back to reality. Damn it! I messed up! Gido cursed angrily, realizing his mistake. Raymond was not a newbie. And certainly was not a weakling either. But I gotta win. Refusing to back down, Gido sent out even more tops, doubling their number to 50. But he didn't stop there. With a surge of determination, he infused his body with Nen, causing the tops to collide and spin in a frantic pattern before hurtling toward Raymond with even greater force. Raymond shook his head in disappointment, his movements fluid as he effortlessly evaded the swirling tops. In a blur, he traversed the arena, appearing right in front of Gido, who had spun to shield himself. This will be my 10th win. Nice try, newbie. Raymond's words made Gido widen his eyes in shock. With precision and finesse, he delivered a powerful punch straight into Gido's face. The impact sent Gido hurtling through the air, crashing outside of the arena with a deafening boom. A crater formed upon impact, with Gido at its center, sprawled against the wall below the stunned audience. The arena fell into silence as they tried to comprehend what had just happened. Whoa! Did you see that? One punch! The crowd then erupted into a frenzy as their cheers reverberated throughout the arena. All eyes were on Raymond. They were completely stunned by his display of power. Chapter 58, Chapter 55, Settling the Debt. You're now eligible to challenge the Floor Master, a Heaven's Arena staff member informed Raymond as he exited the arena. You won't need to register for fights anymore. Just make sure to visit our office on the 200th floor if you want to challenge any Floor Master. Raymond nodded in understanding as he turned to find someone who appeared to have been awaiting him. I thought you'd be thrilled to see me, Hisoka greeted him with a chuckle as a smirk was playing on his lips. Raymond ignored Hisoka's jest, instead inspecting his arms and legs. Despite not having been sewn back on by one of the member of the Phantom Troop yet, they seemed to be functioning normally. Your arms and legs seem intact. I was hoping they'd deteriorate somehow. Raymond felt a tinge of surprise within him. It appeared that Hisoka possessed a level of skill in manipulation that Raymond hadn't anticipated. Oh, this. Hisoka nonchalantly toyed with his arms, detaching one as if it were a piece of Lego before reattaching it. Well, I'm barely hanging on though. He remarked with a gentle smile, provoking a disgusted expression from Raymond. Hisoka chuckled at Raymond's reaction as he continued leaning on the wall as Raymond continued walking. Are you still playing with those thieves? Why? Don't you already know? Hisoka replied with a knowing smile, fully aware that someone of Raymond caliber would most likely already had the answers. Although Hisoka might not be well versed in all aspects of the world, he certainly had knowledge about significant entities like the Celestia Consortium, which happened to be under the person standing before him. Why was he so certain? Because no one would be stupid enough to dare using Celestia as their surname. If Celestials exists, there can only be one Celestial. And that is the Celestia Consortium. Those arrogant words were their motto. This phrase was widely known in society, having been broadcast during a press conference a few years back when they were asked by the reporters. If his information was restricted, there must be more to it. Hisoka's eyes gleamed with a cunning light. The Hunter Association didn't limit access to information lightly. There had to be a compelling reason for such restrictions beyond mere wealth and influence. And more importantly, the one who had lurked in the shadows all this time was now stepping into the light. Hisoka felt his whole body tense as he licked his lips. I'm sure he'll throw a party soon. And Hisoka was all for it. There's this annual auction in your new city that was supposedly cancelled, Raymond stated, brushing off Hisoka's words as he strode past him. It's all just nonsense, Raymond continued, the auction will still be held, but only the invited can participate in it. And why should I care? Hisoka chuckled, his desire to confront Raymond growing stronger with each passing moment. However, he forced himself to suppress the urge, curious about the kind of party Raymond might soon throw. Aren't you all a bunch of thieves? Knowing such information might come in handy, don't you think? Raymond shook his head, his expression unreadable. Hisoka's eyes gleamed with a hint of understanding, realizing what Raymond was getting at. I'm a new guy. You think they'd buy it? Hisoka shook his head. Raymond lightly frowned as he replied, just do what you're told. Isn't she coming over soon? You know she's coming. Hisoka was slightly taken aback that Raymond was privy to such information. Despite his outer appearance that seemed fine, Hisoka still needed his arms and legs to be stitched up. That's why he had to request assistance from a member of the Phantom Troop who possessed the necessary skill. Raymond chuckled softly, coming to a stop and meeting Hisoka's gaze directly. Nothing in the world could escape me. Despite the smile, his eyes betrayed his true feelings, conveying a sense of unease. Hisoka couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. Understanding the significant power backing Raymond, Hisoka realized why he could speak so confidently. Suddenly, the situation seemed much more serious to him. It was all fun and games until he realized that his every move might be under surveillance. Raymond continued to walk away, casually waving his hand as he spoke. "Don't forget it, you owe me one, okay?" Hisoka's expression shifted to one of nonchalance as he watched Raymond's figure gradually fade down the corridor, his mind already at work. "Kakik, it's not like I can do anything about it, can I?" Hisoka chuckled once again, deciding to shift his focus to more exciting matters. His expression took on a peculiar look as he muttered to himself, "Let's hope he invited me to the party." Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, a man, his expression fraught with urgency, hurried through the bustling streets of downtown. Glancing around nervously, he slipped into a nearby phone booth. His fingers were trembling as he dialed a number, his eyes darting around anxiously until the call finally connected. "The number that you are calling. And thine eye shall not pity, but life shall go for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot." But before the voice could finish, the man abruptly cut it short. As his words trailed off, the phone line fell silent, leaving the man to stew in his growing anxiety as he waited for a response. "Agent 84. Agent 84 speaking." The man's voice trembled as he hastily tried to steady himself. He was normally composed, but he was caught between fear and excitement. Whatever he had stumbled upon could either lead to his demise or bring wealth beyond measure. "I've spotted the chairman of the Celestia consortium. I need the photo maker on standby." The person on the other end seemed taken aback too, responding, "Just give me a moment." Their photo maker had the extraordinary ability to craft an accurate image of a person based solely on a verbal description. The man in the line waited anxiously, his heart pounding in his chest. As he glanced around, he noticed the street growing eerily silent, sending shivers down his spine. "Fuck, I must have been too paranoid about this." The man tried to calm himself down and decided to stick with the plan. "Photo maker on standby." The voice on the other end changed as the man prepared himself, taking a deep breath before continuing, "Proceed with the description." "It's a man in his mid-20s, with well-defined facial features and a symmetrical face. He has striking crimson eyes framed by sharp eyebrows. His dark hair is neatly parted down the middle, fell smoothly to accentuate his strong jawline and cheekbones." As the man finished speaking, a sense of relief washed over him. However, a sudden blast of cold air swept through the phone booth. Frost formed rapidly, covering everything in thick ice, including the man and the phone. The ice spread quickly, trapping him inside and making it impossible for him to move or make any sound. Outside, Sakujiro stood atop the frozen phone booth, his expression was cold. "We've obtained the image. You must leave the country immediately." He heard muffled sounds coming from within the ice. "Agent 84? Can you hear me? Agent 84?" Ignoring the sounds, Sakujiro spoke through his communication device in his ears. "How did it go?" "We've taken care of the rest of them." "Good job, take care of their bodies well," Sakujiro instructed as his gaze gleamed in a ruthless light. Chapter 59, Chapter 56, Reacting to the News. In a large mansion on a dark night, a man in a black suit and sunglasses hurried down a hallway. The mansion felt spooky, with shadows flickering on the walls and silence all around. The mansion itself was huge, with fancy decorations and tall columns. Inside, it was quiet except for the man's quick footsteps on the shiny floors. With sweat on his forehead, the man reached a big door at the end of the hallway. He knocked on it nervously, holding a piece of paper. "Come in," said a deep voice from inside. The man opened the door and went in, bowing politely. "Pardon me for intruding on your rest," he stammered, bowing deeply as he entered the dimly illuminated chamber. In a dimly lit room, a man in his early 50s wearing a smooth pajama and with a shaved head gestured impatiently for his subordinate to speak up. "We've got a picture of the man behind the Celestia consortium." The subordinate reported that before handing over a piece of paper with a picture of Raymond on it. "Are you sure it's him?" The boss's eyes widened in surprise as he scrutinized the image closely. He couldn't believe what he was seeing, a young face staring back at him. The subordinate confirmed with a solemn expression, "Yes, we're certain it's him." Frowning, the boss set the picture down on his side table. Turning to his subordinate, he issued a command, "Bring the person who spotted this man to me tomorrow." "About that?" The subordinate's expression shifted at the question. Sensing the gravity of the situation, the boss's frown deepened. "What's the situation?" "We've lost contact with Agent 84. Bam! The subordinate replied cautiously as the boss slammed his hand down on the side table with a resounding thud. The sudden noise stirred a young woman from her sleep on the bed beside him, her tousled hair framing her face as she blinked awake, clearly disoriented. "What's going on, honey?" she mumbled sleepily. "Get the fuck out!" the boss snapped, his tone sharp and commanding. "Excuse me." The woman's disbelief was palpable, but the boss's expression remained cold and unyielding. "You heard me," he replied coldly. "But my purse that you promised." She began to protest, her voice tinged with desperation, but she trailed off when she saw the cold glint in his eyes. The chill in his gaze sent a shiver down her spine, and she quickly changed her mind. Without saying anything else, she quickly left the room without bothering to put on her clothes, grabbing the bedsheet to cover herself as she dashed out. The subordinate, unaffected by her abrupt exit, stayed calm as if such situations were nothing out of the ordinary. Meanwhile, the boss turned his attention back to him, causing him to feel a bit nervous. "Give me the full story," the boss demanded, his tone serious. The subordinate quickly explained what happened with Agent 84. He described how they lost contact with him after he shared info about the Celestia consortium. Realizing Agent 84 had been silenced, we immediately ended the call and attempted to reach out to the other agents. The subordinate's voice trembled as he swallowed nervously. After gathering his composure, he continued, "But then, we soon discovered that none of them were responding." "Are you saying they're all?" "Yes, it appears that the Celestia consortium has silenced every one of our agents in the Republic of Padokia." The boss's expression grew grim as he absorbed the troubling news. He turned to look at Raymond's picture, and those crimson eyes felt exceptionally chilling at the moment as he gripped his fist in anger. "We're in the dark about what's going on in the country now," the subordinate added, looking worried. The room felt heavy all of a sudden as the subordinate tried to wipe beads of sweat that formed on his forehead. They had deployed thousands of agents to maintain their information network and control. However, it appeared that none had made it through the night alive. "What about our agents in other countries?" the boss inquired, his tone urgent. "They appear to be unaffected," the subordinate replied. "I see," the boss murmured while his hand reached up to massage his throbbing temples. "Get me in touch with the other dons right away. We need to address this situation immediately." "Understood." The boss, one of the 10 dons, rose from his seat with determination. His subordinate opened the door, and they strode out into the corridor together. "Boss, should we still send out invitations to them?" the subordinate asked, concern evident in his voice. The don stopped walking, his brow furrowing as he thought about the invitation. His subordinate was asking about the annual auction invite that was meant for the Celestia consortium. It was a way to lure out their leader since they were itching to know the face behind the consortium so badly. But with Raymond showing up unexpectedly, things had changed. The don pondered as he was feeling torn. On one hand, Raymond's sudden appearance meant they might not need the invite anymore. But the gruesome fate of their agents made him thoroughly angered. His expression turned icy as he gave his orders, "Send the invitation. Let's see if he's bold enough to set foot on our turf. And deal with that woman. She knows too much." The don's tone grew even colder as he added. The subordinate's expression remained unchanged as he acknowledged the orders, "Understood." Together, they strode down the corridor, the tension thick in the air. The night outside seemed calm, but within the mansion, a storm of fury and vengeance brewed. Meanwhile, across the globe, within a sprawling traditional Japanese residence, a blonde middle-aged man was holding a baby girl with his eyes twinkling with fatherly love. Bathed in the gentle glow of warm light, he lifted the baby in his arms, pulling silly faces and making playful sounds, "Guga guga." However, the baby didn't seem to be impressed. Her expression didn't even change as she regarded the middle-aged man with what seemed like mild disdain. "Looks like Ava's not buying it, dear," Tatiana remarked with a sigh, observing her husband's silly act to entertain their daughter. No, darling. I just need to up my game." Luke stubbornly persisted, attempting another silly gesture, only for Ava to squirm out of his grasp. Perplexed, he tilted his head. Oh, you want to explore? With a silly grin, Luke lowered Ava to the carpeted floor, where she immediately began crawling towards the door with fervor, calling out, Ray Ray! Send a letter to the Zalik. As if summoned by her plea, the door swung open, revealing Raymond with Sekujiro trailing behind. No, scratch that. I'll take care of that Zalik letter myself. Understood. Ray Ray. Oh, Ava. Raymond's face brightened as he knelt down and scooped Ava into his arms, eliciting delighted squeals from the baby. Meanwhile, Luke's expression darkened, frustration seeping into his being. Raymond, you bastard! This is all your fault! He muttered under his breath, his mood sinking. Chapter 60, Chapter 57, Unprecedented. Witnessing Ava happily clinging to Raymond, a surge of anger and frustration overcame Luke, and he began to curse, Raymond, you bass! Bam! Before Luke could finish his expletive, a powerful punch slammed him to the floor, breaking it open and creating a small crater with Luke at its center. Watch your language around our little one, Tatiana remarked calmly, her eyes carrying a hint of sternness that made Luke shiver. He slowly rose to his feet, letting out a sigh. I appreciate you holding back, but you have to be mindful of your strength now. Look at what you did to the floor, Luke said, gesturing toward the damage caused by Tatiana's punch. Oh dear, I'm terribly sorry. My maternal instincts just took over. Tatiana exclaimed in surprise, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment as she surveyed the crater she had inadvertently created. Raymond chuckled at the scene, finding the situation rather amusing. Ava glanced at the crater, then back at her father, before turning her attention to Raymond. Ray Ray! Baba! Raymond grinned, you bet I could do the same, sweetheart. Baba! Absolutely. Your old man may not be as weak, but I have muscles to spare. Raymond flexed his arm playfully, and Ava mimicked him with a giggle, Baba. Hat, looks like you're on my side, hey. Baba. Ava pumped her little fist in agreement, bringing a hearty laugh from Raymond. Even Sekujiro, usually reserved, couldn't help but chuckle at the sight. However, Luke's expression grew darker by the moment. All right, brat. Let's get down to business, Luke rubbed his temples, motioning for Tatiana to take Ava from Raymond's arms since it was her bedtime. Bedtime, darling? Mommy will tuck you in, Tatiana chimed with a bright smile, gently lifting Ava, who seemed hesitant. With a pout, Ava glanced back at Raymond, uttering her soft plea, Baba. Don't worry, little one. I'll be right here tomorrow, too. Baba. Ava blinked innocently, her eyes shimmering with the threat of tears. I promise. Raymond beamed reassuringly and nodded. Stepping closer, he extended his pinky to Ava, who eagerly grasped it, exclaiming, Baba. You've got it, Ava. A pinky promise is unbreakable, Raymond declared with a grin as Ava giggled with delight. Tatiana then brought her out of the room. With his daughter out of the room, Luke turned to Raymond as he raised his eyebrows, say, what's up now? Raymond gestured calmly for Sekujiro to fill Luke in. Sekujiro explained how Raymond had unveiled his identity to the public and detailed their successful eradication of spies from the 10 dons within the country. So, you're saying we should lay low again? Luke rubbed his temples wearily, turning to Raymond. That's right. Raymond nodded in confirmation, and Luke let out a resigned sigh. He wasn't thrilled about the increased security measures and the limitations on their freedom to travel as they pleased. Still, he understood the necessity of such precautions given the potential consequences of being too visible. With Raymond intentionally making his face known. It was basically a declaration of war against the 10 dons. How long are we going to have to lay low? Luke inquired with a serious expression. Raymond shrugged, not quite sure. Just give me your estimate. You're usually spot on with these things, Luke said casually, but there was weight behind his words. Luke was now numbed by how Raymond controlled their flow of actions with his calculation to get the outcomes he wanted with eerie precision, as if he had a crystal ball revealing the future. About 6 months, Raymond replied, causing Luke to feel a bit shaken. For those thugs. Luke was surprised by the extended timeline. He figured dealing with them would be a quick job. Raymond shook his head, it's a bit tricky, but once all the pieces are in place. We'll handle it swiftly with the Hunter Association not being able to find any fault in any of our actions. All right, I'll trust your judgment, Luke shook his head with a smile before bidding his farewell and leaving the room. With Luke gone, Raymond turned to Sekujiro. How's our prep for the Heavens Arena coming along? We're nearly there. Just a few more weeks and we'll be set, Sekujiro replied, giving a brief overview of their progress. Raymond frowned slightly, shaking his head. Weeks? Get it done in 1 week. But won't that raise suspicion? Sekujiro looked surprised. Raymond chuckled, looking at Sekujiro as if he'd overlooked something obvious. Who cares? This country belongs to us now. Sekujiro nodded in understanding. I see, my apologies. I'll make it happen tomorrow. That's all right, besides. Raymond looked out the window toward the city with a smirk playing on his lips. My date is about to arrive soon. Oh. Sekujiro's eyes twinkled with thoughtfulness, a smile forming on his face. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted, and their expressions turned chilly, causing birds in the vicinity to scatter in fright. The following day, Heaven's Arena experienced an unusual surge in activity, catching everyone off guard. To the surprise of many, there was a sudden influx of fighters making their way up to the 200th floor, a sight not seen in quite some time. What made this even more peculiar was that these newcomers seemed to stick to battling each other exclusively. In just a few days, among the newbies, there were 21 fighters who were able to accumulate enough wins collectively to challenge the floor master, causing unease among the other fighters on the 200th floor. They wanted to complain, yet when they witnessed their fight, they immediately backed down as they realized those fighters were far above their league. Gone, hey gone. Did you hear? There are like 21 new fighters that are able to challenge the floor master. Killua's voice echoed with excitement, catching Gon off guard. 21? Where did they all come from? Just showed up out of nowhere. In just a week, they've all qualified to take on the big boss. Hey, Wing-sensei. Do you know what's going on? Are they really strong? Gon called out to Wing, who was casually observing the Nen training session nearby. Wing scratched his head, pondering the recent surge of fighters. Well, I'm not entirely sure. But those guys are tough, especially that fighter named Sin. He's probably the strongest among them. He went on, recalling how Sin managed to defeat opponents without making any sounds, which made the crowd to be confused. It was as if he had some sort of invisible shield. What made it even scarier was that he defeated them all using just martial arts and Nen. So, that means his Hatsu must be what's blocking any sound? Wing mused, his expression thoughtful as he weighed whether to report this to the higher UPS in the Hunter Association right away. Meanwhile, the kids chattered away among themselves, oblivious to the weight of the situation. Wing watched them with a smile, thinking, let's wait and see for now. Chapter 61, Chapter 58, The Dream Witch. Today, Heaven's Arena was packed with excitement as word of the newly qualified fighters challenging the floor masters quickly spread. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Hey, did you hear? Those newbies are taking on all the floor masters at once. No way. That's insane. Who are these guys? The buzz of conversation filled the air as spectators from all over the arena gathered to witness the unprecedented event. The corridor leading to the big monitor was bustling with energy as spectators gathered to catch a glimpse of the action. Look at all these people. It's like everyone's here for Raymond's fight. Killua and Gon marveled at the sea of faces filling every available seat, eager to witness the spectacle unfolding in the arena. They had just caught wind of Raymond's presence at Heaven's Arena when news of his challenge to the 250th floor master spread throughout the arena like wildfire. After confirming it was indeed the Raymond they knew of, they wasted no time in making their way to the arena to catch the showdown. But isn't his opponent a renowned fighter too? Zushi added to the conversation, sparking a lively debate about the matchup and whether Raymond's opponent stood a chance against him. Zushi was skeptical as he had never heard of the person they were discussing. He was firm in his belief that the floor master of the 250th was the ultimate powerhouse of the Heavens Arena. Even though everyone wanted to watch all the matches by staying at the corridor, each arena was still full of people excited to see the fight up close. Wing shook his head as he glanced at the kids, then scanned the arena. His attention sharpened when he spotted a man with thick glasses in the crowd. He's not challenging the floor master, too, is he? Wing became cautious as he noticed Sin, one of the new fighters on the 200th floor who was qualified to challenge the floor master. He was accompanied by a group of men in matching black suits and sunglasses, seemingly taking charge and spreading out across the arena. Ladies and gentlemen. Wing sensed something brewing as the announcer's voice echoed throughout the arena. Welcome to another thrilling night at Heaven's Arena. I'm your host, Lin, and tonight's showdown is going to be absolutely epic. The crowd erupted in cheers, anticipating the epic battle that was about to unfold. And now, making his grand entrance, the man whose legend forced Heaven's Arena to rewrite its rulebook, give it up for Raymond Celestia. Raymond! 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 The crowd erupted into cheers and applause, chanting Raymond's name with excitement as he made his way into the arena. The announcer's voice brimmed with excitement as she exclaimed, "Get ready, everyone! Raymond Celestia is back to steal the show and reclaim his glory." Raymond scanned the lively crowd as he strolled confidently towards the arena. With a nod from the referee, Raymond flashed a smile, signaling his readiness to take on the challenge. Facing off against Raymond, we have the enigmatic floor master of the 250th floor. Introducing Cassandra. She's maintained an unbeaten streak shrouded in mystery, leaving everyone wondering just how formidable she truly is. As the announcer's words echoed, a young woman in a flowing purple kimono, her hair and eyes a matching shade of purple, lazily stepped into view. She appeared half asleep as she ambled towards the arena. Tonight, she's taking center stage to uphold her title against Raymond Celestia. While the crowd and announcer buzzed with excitement, Cassandra appeared rather nonchalant. With a bored yawn, she glanced at Raymond. "Let's make this quick so I can go back to sleep." Her words drifted lazily to both the referee and Raymond. The referee felt a bead of sweat trickle down his forehead at Cassandra's remark, but Raymond just laughed it off. "Okay, everyone. With both fighters in position and raring to go, let the show begin." With deliberate steps, the referee walked off the stage as he caught Raymond's curious gaze. Then, with a sudden raise of his hand, he bellowed, "Let the match begin." The excitement in the air was palpable, echoing not only on the 250th floor but resonating through every level from 230th to the top. With all battles kicking off simultaneously, anticipation ran high. But to everyone's surprise, Raymond and Cassandra remained motionless, turning the cheers into a hush of uncertainty. What's going on? Are they just standing there? Well, this is quite disappointing. Confusion and disappointment washed over the arena, with spectators exchanging puzzled glances as Raymond and Cassandra remained motionless in the ring, leaving everyone wondering what was happening. Aren't you going to make a move?" Cassandra inquired, tilting her head cutely to the side. Raymond shook his head with a smile. "Not just yet," he replied, glancing at the time on his wristwatch. Cassandra blinked in confusion at Raymond's hesitation, then asked again, "Are you waiting for something?" "Yeah, kinda," Raymond admitted. "Do you want me to kick things off?" Cassandra sighed, "Please. I'd rather be in my cozy bed on the 250th floor." "I doubt you'll be napping there after this," Raymond retorted. "Hey!" Cassandra's drowsy expression shifted as her sleepiness began to fade. She furrowed her eyebrows, "You seem confident in yourself." "No, that's what I should be asking. Are you confident in beating me?" Raymond responded with a light smirk. Annoying guy," Cassandra scoffed childishly, her playful demeanor shifting as the sleepiness in her eyes vanished. She was easily provoked by Raymond's simple banter, her lips forming a pout of irritation. Suddenly, she opened her hands wide, a determined glint in her eyes. "You asked for this, go die." With a swift motion, a wave of nen gathered in her outstretched palms, pulsating with a vibrant purple hue. As she focused her aura, her body began to shimmer, gradually transforming into a swirling mist of purple energy. The mist expanded rapidly, engulfing the entire arena in a surreal haze. Raymond found his line of sight obscured, the mist distorting his surroundings and leaving him disoriented in its ethereal embrace. "Hey, look! Cassandra's getting in on the action. About time. This is what we came for." "Yeah, I was starting to nod off." "Alright, things are getting spicy now." The previously quiet crowd erupted with renewed energy, their enthusiasm returning as they eagerly watched the unfolding battle in anticipation. As the mist began to clear, the anticipation in the crowd grew to a fever pitch. They eagerly awaited the reveal of the fighters, but as Cassandra's mist dispersed, their excitement turned to confusion and disbelief. What in the world? Did anything even happen? In the arena, Raymond and Cassandra remained in the same positions, seemingly unaffected by the mysterious mist that had enveloped them moments before. Meanwhile, Sin, leading a small team of bodyguards from the Celestial Force, signaled for the others to stay alert and be ready to act if needed. He observed the arena, noticing that both fighters appeared to have a distant look in their eyes. "So, she's the Dream Witch," Hey! Sin muttered to himself, looks like they were both in the dreamland at the moment. Chapter 62, Chapter 59, The Dreamless Conqueror. Hey? Why aren't they moving? Yeah, it's like they're in a daze or something. Gon and Killua exchanged puzzled glances. Sensei, what's going on? Zushi looked to Wing for answers. Gon and Killua turned to Wing, their expressions curious and eager for answers. It's Cassandra's ability. She can apparently bring her opponents into their own subconscious minds. Right now, Raymond seems to be caught in his own subconscious along with her. Really? That's a pretty wild ability. Yes, there are plenty of unique abilities in the world. Hers is quite exceptional. In the past, most of her opponents would either pass out or drop dead after being pulled into whatever her power led them to. That's why she has remained undefeated on the 250th floor. None of her opponents could easily escape her ability, leaving them either unconscious or facing a more permanent consequence, depending on their preference for a normal match or a death match. Still, there was one puzzling thing for Wing as he observed Raymond. He channeled his Nen, focusing on his eyes to confirm. Is he using Zetsu? But why? Wing noticed that Raymond's aura node had been intentionally cut off, as if he wanted to be drawn into Cassandra's ability. What's he up to? Wing furrowed his brow in confusion, while Gon and Killua exchanged worried glances. The fight on the 230th floor just finished. The 231st too. Sin was listening in through his earpiece as nodded in acknowledgement. It's about time. Stepping closer to the edge of the audience area, he seemed to be contemplating something while he channeling his Nen throughout his body as he prepared his seal. He shook his head while observing Raymond's figure, devoid of any Nen protection. Sin mumbled to himself, with his formidable Nen, her ability wouldn't even scratch him. But why on earth would he willingly step into the lion's den and experience it firsthand? Sin understood that Cassandra's power could potentially affect him unless he dealt with her swiftly. So he grasped Raymond's desire to defeat her personally. However, he couldn't fathom why Raymond would willingly subject himself to Cassandra's dreamy tricks. Forget it, I can't truly fathom his thought as he was beyond me. Sin muttered as his eyes sharpened and focused on his task. Meanwhile, in Raymond's dreamlike world, everything was blank white, with him standing alone at its center. Then, like a ghost appearing out of thin air, Cassandra slowly formed above him. She floated there, a sly grin on her face as she looked down at him. Let's see what's in your dream, she chuckled. Cassandra had a special power. She could trap people in their own dreams and twist them against them. In the past, she'd used this power in cruel ways. Once, she trapped a guy who dreamed of swimming with dolphins and made those dolphins turn on him, causing him unimaginable pain. Another time, she turned a guy's victory over a gorilla into a crushing defeat. There were many more and none of them could escape her power unscathed. Hee, it's your own fault, handsome guy. No hard feelings here. As Cassandra's icy gaze fell on Raymond, the white surroundings seemed to buzz with anticipation, ready to reveal his deepest thoughts. But to her surprise, nothing changed. The blankness stayed the same. What? Confused, Cassandra's grin faded, replaced by a look of uncertainty. Still, after waiting for some time as she channeled more of her Nen, she was shocked to find that nothing had changed in the dream world as she fell down, landing on her butt. Suddenly, Raymond, who should have been out cold, stared straight at her with his bright red eyes, sending shivers down her spine. I'm glad. Raymond's voice echoed, his crimson eyes glowing intensely. Hey! Cassandra couldn't believe what she was hearing. I was afraid. I was afraid I'd have a dream. Ignoring her, Raymond continued, looking around at the endless white space. Hearing these words prompted Cassandra's eyes to widen in horror as she realized Raymond actually knew of her ability. You know what I can do? Her voice quivered, fear coursing through her. Raymond just smirked, not saying a word. Impossible. Cassandra collapsed to her knees, her whole body shaking uncontrollably. It can't be. Everyone has dreams. How could you not have one? She cried out, her voice filled with hysteria as she pointed a trembling finger at Raymond. Fear nodded Cassandra as she realized the gravity of the situation. Without a dream to manipulate, she had unwittingly trapped herself with a beast. Her power came with rule that to come back to reality, one of them had to lose consciousness or die. Panic surged through her as she faced the daunting reality of her predicament. Dreaming is for the weak. Raymond muttered, his tone in Cassandra's POV was ominous. He slowly approached her, who trembled even more. Raymond wasn't a dreamer. Since we're in such place, I suppose I could show you a glimpse of my power. Raymond released his nen that he previously suppressed, as it burst forth with an overwhelming force before engulfing the entire dream world in its wake. The once static white space crackled and fractured under the weight of his power. Cassandra's face drained of color as a strange, yellow substance began to seep from beneath her trembling form. The ground beneath her seemed to shift and warp, responding to the overwhelming energy radiating from Raymond. As if in response to his command, the unyielding whiteness of the dream world shattered, revealing an ancient, regal throne room. At its center sat a magnificent throne, and upon it, Raymond settled himself with his crimson eyes gleaming with a terrifying light. Cassandra could only watch in horror as she felt her power being consumed by something beyond her imagination as she slowly losing control of her ability. Raymond looked at Cassandra's terrified expression. Doubt never crossed his mind. He was always certain of achieving his goals. Acting with confidence and determination, he knew he had the skills to succeed. For him, dreaming was a weakness. With absolute power, nothing could stand in my way. Raymond's declaration echoed through the throne room. In an instant, a surge of energy emanated from Raymond's nen, overwhelming Cassandra's own power. Feeling her own power being devoured, she then collapsed unconscious to the ground, defeated by his sheer dominance. At the same time, Raymond snapped back to the present moment as his gaze falling upon Cassandra's motionless form surrounded by the strange yellow liquid. The arena was hushed, the spectators watching in a mixture of confusion and disbelief. The winner by knockout is Raymond Celestia. The referee broke the silence, his voice cutting through the tension. Though originally confused, since the result was set, cheers erupted from the crowd as Raymond stood victorious. "We've wrapped up on the 249th floor," came the report. Sin's eyes sparked with determination. His nen surged, enveloping the entire arena below the audience, covering Raymond within its protective shroud. The shimmering aura spread like a translucent veil, casting a soft glow over the arena, while Raymond stood at its heart. Perfect timing! Raymond felt a profound shift stirring within his being, a surge of nen that pulsed through his veins like a river of energy. Chapter 63, Chapter 60, Imperial Ascendants. I could only come up with one chap again today, and I have a few deadlines coming up. Well, by the time you read this, I'd be 1 hour away from the deadline. Hopefully, I could make it XD. Anyway, sorry about this and enjoy the chap. It's starting, hey. Sekujiro had just arrived on the scene and slowly made his way toward Sin. He could see that Sin was struggling, sweat rolling down his face as he fought to keep the seal intact. "You okay?" Sekujiro asked, his voice flat and emotionless. Sin could only manage a weak nod in response, his breathing heavy and labored as he battled to maintain the seal. Sekujiro acknowledged Sin's response with a nod of his own before turning his gaze to the arena. His eyes narrowed as he observed Raymond standing tall, his hair gently swaying as if stirred by an unseen breeze. Sin's seal was shimmering faintly as he tried his utmost to hold it together despite the strain. Back inside the sealed arena, the referee's expression turned ashen as he felt a heavy weight pressing down on his shoulders. A surge of nen energy erupted from Raymond's form, slamming the referee to the ground with immense force. "I'll give you a few seconds, take her along with you," Raymond's voice echoed through the arena. With a nod of understanding, the referee scrambled to comply, his heart pounding in his chest. Raymond took a deep breath, veins bulging in his neck and face as he exerted every ounce of his strength to control the surging energy. "Now!" Raymond's voice boomed. Without hesitation, the referee sprang into action. With a blur of motion, he darted across the arena, scooping up Cassandra in his arms as he moved with lightning speed. As they barely escaped the arena, a surge of even greater pressure enveloped the entire space with Raymond at the center. Sin's face drained of color as he felt the blood rush to his throat, struggling to maintain consciousness as he worked to seal off the arena from prying eyes outside. The intensity of Raymond's aura threatened to overwhelm Sin, but he gritted his teeth, refusing to succumb to the overwhelming force. No, not yet. With every ounce of his strength, he fought to contain the power within the sealed arena, ensuring that no one beyond its bounds would sense the formidable energy emanating from Raymond. Wing furrowed his eyebrows as he watched Sin's condition. He had been suspicious of him for a while now, and Sin's current state only deepened his unease. Glancing over at the arena, Wing noticed Raymond's hair moving as if there were a breeze, and cracks forming on the ground beneath him, spreading across the entire arena. Is he using Ren? But why can't I feel it? Wing wondered aloud, puzzled by the lack of any noticeable power emanating from Raymond's figure. Then, it clicked. He remembered Sin's strained appearance and the strange absence of energy coming from the arena. Is he somehow blocking others from sensing what's happening inside? He murmured, realizing the extent of Sin's efforts to conceal whatever was going on within. Wing straightened his posture and focused his Nen energy into his eyes. As he peered into the arena, his eyes widened in shock at what he saw. A powerful seal encased the entire arena. Within the seal, a swirling tornado of dark red aura emanated from Raymond, casting an eerie glow that sent chills down Wing's spine. As time passed, the aura grew increasingly darker and more menacing, filling Wing with a sense of dread unlike anything he had ever seen before. What in the world? Wing muttered in disbelief. Meanwhile, Raymond's face twisted into his trademark smirk as he sensed the overwhelming potency of his aura, far stronger than ever before. With Heaven's arena under his control and after the letter he had sent to Zalik, the Zalik family was now basically on his side. And there was no denying that the Republic of Padokia lay firmly within his grasp. A sense of euphoria washed over him as if he were being baptized in power. Closing his eyes, he savored the exhilarating sensation coursing through his entire being. Such an addicting feeling, Raymond chuckled, reveling in the intoxicating rush of dominance and control. The ground beneath him, which had already cracked from his immense power, suddenly shattered. A collective gasp swept through the crowd as they watched in disbelief. What the hell was that? Why did the arena just crack open like that? I didn't hear anything, though. Murmurs of confusion and disbelief rippled through the audience, their eyes wide with astonishment as they pointed accusing fingers at Raymond, the sole figure standing amidst the chaos. Gon, Killua, and Zushi exchanged puzzled looks, then turned to Wing, whose complexion had visibly paled. Concern etched their faces as they voiced their confusion. Sensei, what's happening? Zushi asked, his voice tinged with worry. Wing remained silent, his expression grim. The kids looked at each other, perplexed by Wing's silence. It was unlike him to be at a loss for words. What do you think is happening right now? Gon whispered to Killua. I don't know but... Killua shook his head. He glanced at the shattered arena below, his brow furrowing with concern for Raymond. He should be fine, right? On the sidelines, Sekujiro watched Sin's condition with worry. He knew the young man was pushing himself too hard. Turning his gaze to Raymond in the arena, he muttered, Imperial ascendants. Sekujiro understood Raymond's ability well. The more control they had over a territory, the stronger his aura became. It was a fundamental rule of his power. The more he conquers, the stronger he gets, Sekujiro thought, feeling a mix of awe and fear. Raymond's ability was both impressive and terrifying. With each new territory he claimed, his Nen would grow stronger, reflecting his dominance over the land. As he expanded his influence and asserted his authority over larger areas, his aura surged, showing the power he held over the land and its people. It was a power that commanded respect and fear alike. That's why we serve him, as he is the one and only. Sekujiro muttered, his pupils gleaming with a slightly crazed light. Ruler we need in the entire continent. Meanwhile, the pressure on Sin's seal continued to mount, causing blood to trickle from his mouth. He watched helplessly as cracks began to spread across his seal like a spider web. Turning his gaze towards Raymond, he muttered weakly, I've reached my limit, master. Chapter 64, Chapter 61, A Fake News. Raymond let out a heavy breath, feeling his Nen slowly stabilize. His gaze shifted to Sin's struggling seal, on the brink of collapse. With a grim tone, he muttered, this is going to hurt more, Sin. Suddenly, Raymond took control of his rampaging Nen within the seal. It clashed against the seal relentlessly as if determined to break it open. Then, with a sudden stillness, Raymond redirected his Nen, swirling it towards himself and devouring it back into his own being. The abrupt change in movement within the seal intensified the pressure on Sin. Shit! Gritting his teeth, he felt blood trickling from his mouth, nose, and ears. His complexion turned deathly pale, the pain evident in his expression as he struggled to withstand the overwhelming force bearing down on him. I can't. Sin muttered, his voice trailing off as his vision began to blur. Darkness encroached upon him, and he collapsed to the ground. Fortunately, Sekujiro was nearby. Good job, Sin. He swiftly caught Sin before he hit the ground, gesturing for others to assist in getting Sin immediate medical attention. Simultaneously, his seal emitted a sharp cracking sound, swiftly breaking apart. The crowd watched in disbelief as the arena, with Raymond at its center, was reduced to dust. However, they felt nothing else, for Raymond had managed to reclaim the torrent of Nen he had unleashed earlier. Ignoring the disbelief crowd, Raymond slowly made his way out, leaving the whole arena in silence. Meanwhile, in one of the private rooms on the 200th floor, Hisoka's expression twisted into a strange mix of excitement and delight as he watched the confusing match between Raymond and Cassandra unfold. Unable to detect Nen through the monitors, Hisoka could only observe the chaos without fully understanding its source. Yet, he recognized the sheer power behind the destruction wreaked solely by Nen. Its destructive level was even beyond what the leader of his small group could do. Kakik. Hisoka licked his lips in anticipation. So, you're a floor master now. Does that mean I only need to qualify to challenge you? You creepy clown, cut it out with that face, a woman's annoyed voice cut through the air. Ignoring her, Hisoka continued to grin, much to her irritation. You said you wanted to get stitched up. Show me where quickly, you idiot, she snapped, clicking her tongue in annoyance. Hisoka turned to his guest, unfazed by her demeanor. She was a petite woman with pink hair tied up messily, her blue eyes sharp with anger. It was Maki, the number 3 spider of the Phantom Troop. Hisoka's smile widened as he gently displayed his arms and legs, detached but still functional, to Maki. She wrinkled her nose in disgust at the sight. That's disgusting. How do you even manage to keep those arms and legs functioning? She asked with slight surprise in her tone. It's a magic trick, Hisoka replied casually with a gleam of mischief in his eyes. Maki rolled her eyes, shaking her head in disbelief. Fucking clown, she muttered under her breath, exasperated by Hisoka's antics. Maki shook her head with clear irritation on her face, as she approached Hisoka. Humph. Her expression turned serious as she focused her aura, creating a bright light between her hands as she channeled her Nen. Pulling out her sewing needle, Maki swiftly began to sew up Hisoka's detached arms with skillful precision. As always, what a fascinating ability you have there, Hisoka remarked with his eyebrows raised with curiosity as he watched the whole process. He observed closely as Maki's hands moved quickly, stitching up his arms before moving on to the next. Shut up! Maki retorted sharply while her focus remained unwavering as she continued to stitch up the rest of Hisoka's limb. After an hour of meticulous work, she finally finished as she wiped a sweat from her forehead. That's it, I'll leave. Never call me again. Maki announced, gathering her belongings. Why the rush? Just enjoy some time in the city. Hisoka suggested casually while trying to move it around without his bungee gum. He nodded in satisfaction as Maki continued to walk toward the door. I hate big crowds, Maki responded with a frown. Hisoka shook his head, remembering how Maki's eyes had flickered with unease while watching the fight on the monitor earlier. He asked with a smile, don't you have anyone you know here? Ha! I don't know anyone in the city, she replied defensively. Hisoka chuckled, feigning hurt, that's harsh. Don't you know me? You. Maki looked at Hisoka with disdain before shaking her head. I'd rather forget you for eternity. Kakik, that's cute. Hisoka chuckled, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Then, his expression shifted as if he remembered something, oh right. Hisoka hummed, appearing lost in thought. Maki grew impatient and urged him, chop chop, I gotta go fast. Ah, yes. I heard there was this auction in your new city. I wonder if we're going there. Hisoka mused. That auction was cancelled, you dummy. We're not going anywhere. Maki snapped back. Hisoka tilted his head in confusion, really? But I heard it was just fake news. Are you just going to tell me this nonsense and nothing more? Maki demanded, her tone sharp. Kakik, I thought it was important. My bad. Hisoka chuckled and sounded unapologetic. In an instant, a sharp sewing needle flew across the room, grazing Hisoka's cheek. A thin line of blood trickled from the wound as Maki's voice echoed behind her, growing fainter as she walked out of the room, annoying fucking clown. With a smirk, Hisoka touched his cheek, relishing in the sting of the wound left behind by Maki's parting shot. Hisoka's playful expression slowly faded, replaced by a look of nonchalance as he glanced towards the door through which Maki had exited. Poor girl, she's going to be used, he murmured, his gaze lingering thoughtfully on the spot where Maki had disappeared. He observed how Maki seemed to recognize Raymond, prompting him to connect the dots and roughly guess Raymond's intentions. Considering the way Raymond had conveyed his message to the phantom troop through him, Hisoka knew Maki would dwell on his words with the way he relayed the fact. She was a careful person and wouldn't dismiss such rumors, especially coming from someone like Hisoka. Now, I've paid back my debt, Kakik. Hisoka chuckled, his eyes filled with ecstasy once again as he contemplated the prospect of facing Raymond on the 250th floor once he had earned the qualification to challenge the floor master. Chapter 65, Chapter 62, A Date. Oh? We apologize, but since the last few days, there hasn't been anyone registering for a battle anymore. The clerk explained, her voice tinged with weariness. Hisoka regarded the clerk's sleepy expression with an unreadable expression. But, you can still register yourself. It's just that you'll have to wait for another fighter to register. Would that be fine with you? It was true. The other fighters on the 200th floor had been focusing on training after witnessing the events unfolding in Heaven's arena. They had seen the formidable power of those fighters. Hisoka could understand why this happened, knowing they were Raymond's subordinates. While they might not be able to provide some entertainment for him, for the fighters on the 200th floor, they posed a significant challenge. Understood, Hisoka replied dryly, accepting the situation. The clerk, with her sleepy eyes, nodded as she entered Hisoka's name into the registry. Your name is now registered. We'll notify you in advance if there's a fighter signing up for a match later. Hisoka didn't respond, merely turning away and vanishing down the corridor back to his private room, his movements seemingly devoid of life. Meanwhile, Maki strolled down the bustling street, her eyes taking in the sights of the prosperous city that had flourished since her last visit. Hisoka's words about the annual auction by the 10 Dons lingered in her mind, despite the event supposedly being cancelled. She couldn't shake off the feeling of unease that gnawed at her. That clown wasn't stupid, she muttered, her frown deepening. The fact that Hisoka had heard such a rumor and felt compelled to relay it to her suggested there might be some truth. Maki knew she couldn't dismiss it lightly. I need to validate the news first, she said to herself, determination firming her resolve as she scanned the bustling streets. The streets were alive with activity, filled with cars zipping by and public transportation bustling with commuters. The roads were smooth and well maintained, a far cry from the pothole-ridden paths of the past. Towering buildings stretched towards the sky, their sleek facades gleaming in the sunlight. Maki couldn't miss the logos of big-name companies proudly displayed among the towering buildings and bustling streets. These symbols of global recognition spoke volumes about the city's place in the world economy and its reputation as a center of business and progress. The cars whizzing past, the smartphones in people's hands, the name-brand clothes they wore, even their internet providers all linked back to these companies. It felt like their influence reached every aspect of daily life, leaving no stone unturned. She shook her head, muttering, "Fucking greedy." And the companies behind them all were part of the same umbrella, belonging to a single holding company. The interconnected web of influence and power left her with a sense of unease every time she thought of it. I need to get going fast, she muttered under her breath as she increased her pace to blend into the crowd without drawing any unwanted attention. Maki had caught sight of someone she wished to avoid, a figure from her past, someone she had encountered years ago in her hometown. The encounter had left her with a lingering sense of unease and the instinctual urge to distance herself from him as swiftly as possible. A dangerous guy, she muttered, her expression darkening with a mix of wariness and apprehension. Despite labeling him as such, Maki couldn't deny the complex emotions that stirred within her at the thought of their past encounter, leaving her with a furrowed brow and a troubled mind. Maki's senses heightened as she felt the atmosphere shift, the usual bustle of the street giving way to an eerie silence the further she walked. Her frown deepened as a sense of foreboding settled over her. Glancing around, she noticed a group of men in black suits seemingly enclosing her surrounding area. Instinctively, she extended her perception outward, sensing the presence of even more individuals surrounding her. With a quickening heartbeat, Maki activated her nen, channeling it throughout her body. In one swift motion, she retrieved her sewing needle, readying herself for whatever confrontation lay ahead. She took a cautious step backward, her body tensing as she adopted a defensive stance as a car rolled to a stop in front of her. Maki's senses heightened, her pulse quickening with apprehension. Such presence, she muttered as she felt somehow familiar with it before shaking her head as her eyes sharpened. He's dangerous. The presence emanating from the vehicle was undeniably strong and imposing, sending a shiver down her spine. With a sinking feeling, Maki realized that whoever emerged from the car was not to be underestimated. She could sense the looming danger, her instincts warning her of the imminent threat to her life. Her eyes widened in disbelief as the driver stepped out of the car, revealing a face she thought she'd never see again. Shock painted her features as she pointed a trembling finger at the familiar figure, her voice quivering with disbelief. "Why you? Aren't you supposed to be dead?" "It's a bit complicated," Sekujiro replied. His voice was calm yet tinged with a hint of nostalgia as he addressed her by name, "Little Maki." Maki remained silent, her thoughts swirling with confusion and apprehension. "Let's talk about it sometime later," Sekujiro continued, his tone suggesting a sense of urgency, "as my master would like to invite you for dinner." With a resigned sigh, Sekujiro opened the passenger seat, gesturing for Maki to join him. As she hesitated, her gaze locked with the piercing crimson eyes of the man inside the car. A wave of complicated emotions washed over her, leaving her speechless. "It's been a long time, isn't it?" Raymond greeted Maki with a gentle smile, his voice carrying a hint of nostalgia as he motioned for her to join him. "Why don't you come in and let's talk about the good old days in some other place?" Maki hesitated, her gaze darting around the area as she weighed her options. With a deep breath, she turned to face Raymond, her expression hardening into a determined glare. "You don't accept refusal, do you?" She scoffed, her voice laced with annoyance. "Oh, please. I'm not that mean." Raymond chuckled, his words carrying a hint of amusement. "Fucking liar!" Maki retorted, her response filled with skepticism. As she stepped into the car, she could sense the tension among the men surrounding them as she clicked her tongue in annoyance. Raymond paid no heed to Maki's protest, issuing instructions to Sekujiro without a second thought. "I've got my date ready. Bring us to the usual place, Sekujiro." "Understood, master." "Humph, who's your date?" Maki spat, her cheeks puffed up in annoyance. She averted her gaze, trying to hide her embarrassment, but the rush of complicated emotions only seemed to intensify, causing her cheeks to flush slightly. Chapter 66, Chapter 63, Intrusion. Despite Raymond's request for their usual place, he was referring to their own upscale dining establishment, where the two of them sat alone in a grand hall. "Could you please bring us the chef's selection menu for today? And also, your finest wine," Raymond requested. "Of course, sir. I'll inform the chef right away," the server replied, nodding respectfully to Raymond. Maki's lips twitched in speechlessness as she felt she was being scammed by the guy in front of her. She could tell everyone in the restaurant was a well-trained fighter, even the server. Their distinct presence was quite easy to tell, as if they didn't bother hiding it. "And those around us?" Maki gritted her teeth as she felt the glaring presence of Raymond's men surrounding the restaurant as if they were guarding the place. She then shot an angry glare at Raymond, who had just instructed the server to bring them both their specialized menu. Raymond felt the intensity of her gaze as he turned towards her and casually remarked, "It's been quite a while since our last encounter, hasn't it? You still seem to be traveling the world. Care to share any tales from your adventures?" he inquired, his tone casual. "I'd rather not," she replied sharply, her frown deepening. If Maki hadn't known Raymond's identity, she might have considered sharing some information. But she knew of the Celestia consortium and the fact that Raymond was behind it. Sharing even a tiny bit of details would be dangerous for them. "I thought we were quite close, that's too bad." Raymond shook his head, a wry smile tugging at his lips as if he truly felt unfortunate. Maki scoffed in response, knowing Raymond was just acting, her gaze piercing as she scanned Raymond from head to toe. Something seemed different about him, and she couldn't quite place it. "This guy," Maki muttered to herself. When they pulled up in front of her, she thought the dangerous feeling she felt was coming from Sekujiro. After all, she knew just how strong Sekujiro was. But now that they were on their own, as she turned her gaze towards Raymond, she realized the intensity wasn't coming from Sekujiro. He wasn't this strong years ago. Memories of their past encounters flooded Maki's mind, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed in Raymond. But this time was different. Raymond's Nen, the aura surrounding him, seemed to have undergone a significant transformation. It was as if he had achieved some sort of breakthrough, a qualitative change that sent shockwaves through Maki's senses. If what she felt years ago was something that could threaten her life, what she sensed this time was on a whole other level. It could threaten the Phantom Troop itself. Still, Maki remained confident in her leader's prowess. She knew he could take down Raymond if it came to a confrontation. "Still. What are you?" Maki couldn't hold back the question, her voice tinged with disbelief. Even though Raymond appeared outwardly human, with his nen as serene as the ocean, Maki sensed the ominous depths of his aura. It sent shivers down her spine, shocking her to the core. Oh, what a perfect timing! Maki clicked her tongue in response, recognizing Raymond's attempt to change the subject. As the server brought their food to the table, Maki eyed it warily. She knew she was dining in Raymond's territory now. She needed to be on high alert. Why? Are you worried I poisoned your food? Raymond chuckled, noticing Maki's discomfort. Maki remained silent as Raymond shook his head. With a nonchalant gesture, he scooped a bite from her plate and savored it. Let's dig in, Raymond declared, breaking the tension. Maki visibly relaxed, her vigilance over the food easing as she began to eat. Her initial skepticism melted away as the flavors exploded on her palate. The tender meat practically melted in her mouth, while the spices danced across her taste buds in a delightful symphony. Maki's eyes widened in surprise as she realized the food surpassed her expectations. Deserving a fancy restaurant, I guess. Maki muttered under her breath, recalling how the menu lacked prices, a sure sign that only the wealthy would dine in such establishments. However, Raymond's expression shifted suddenly, his smirk turning mocking, sending a chill down Maki's spine. In one swift motion, he opened his mouth, revealing the food he had just scooped from her plate. And you're right, Raymond said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. You should be worried if I poisoned your food. Maki's heart raced as she watched in horror. Without a moment's hesitation, she jumped back, her hand flying to her chest as she frantically tried to spit out the food. Ha ha ha! Raymond burst into laughter at Maki's reaction. Come on, I was just joking. Raymond said, trying to ease the tension. He then took another bite of food, making it clear that he was truly eating this time. Suddenly, a sharp sewing needle flew out of Maki's hand, aimed directly at Raymond's head. With a swift tilt, he dodged the projectile effortlessly. The needle tore through the building, creating a gaping hole of the same size. Raymond sighed, looking at the damage with a hint of pity. That will be costly to repair, he muttered, shaking his head at the unfortunate outcome. As if you lacked any money, you big idiot. Maki's face flushed with anger at Raymond's prank. Profanity poured from her mouth as she pointed furiously at Raymond, scolding him for his antics. Ha ha ha, come on, I was just joking. I didn't know you had this cute side of you. I'm glad. Raymond responded with a laugh, his tone lightening the mood. Maki was taken aback by his comment, her cheeks flushing even redder as she processed his words. Humph, I'll let it slide this time. Maki huffed, her tone still carrying traces of annoyance. She settled back into her seat, her face still flushed with seemingly an irritation. Suddenly, the door of the restaurant burst open, startling them both. A man in a black suit, wearing thick glasses, hurried in, looking visibly nervous. Raymond frowned at the interruption. Sin? What happened? Raymond's displeasure was evident, and Maki observed the scene with a similar air of annoyance, though her eyes sparkled with curiosity as she continued to enjoy her meal. Sin wasted no time, quickly approaching Raymond and whispering something in his ear. Chapter 67, Chapter 64, all lined up. Raymond's eyebrows shot up in surprise at whatever Sin had revealed. Raymond motioned for Sekujiro to join them, then turned back to Sin. Tell him what you just said. Understood. Sin nodded, then turned to Sekujiro, beckoning him to follow as they left to discuss the matter Sin had brought to their attention. You're busy, hey? Maki remarked casually. Well, kind of. Raymond replied, a hint of distraction in his voice as he continued to eat. Maki observed Raymond closely, noticing the subtle signs of agitation. Her eyes sparkled with a cunning light as she prodded, Oh? What kind of thing could bother such an important person like you? It's nothing, just some thugs inviting me to come over. Raymond explained nonchalantly. Thugs? Maki's eyes gleamed with interest at the mention of these words. Raymond didn't seem inclined to share further details. I highly doubt they had anything I want. They probably just wanted to meet me, so don't worry. Besides, if I want something or someone. He locked eyes with Maki, causing her to fluster once again. I can just get it easily. Humph, show off. Maki scoffed, rolling her eyes as they continued to eat their dinner. As the meal ended, Maki excused herself, declining Raymond's invitation to stay overnight. She also refused his offer of a free driver and a car, determined to travel on foot. As Maki's figure vanished into the distance, Raymond stood silently, his gaze lingering where she had been. Sekijuro and Sin approached him, their expressions shifting. Sin's nervous demeanor melted away, replaced by an air of nonchalance, as if his previous unease had been an act. From the start, Raymond had expertly played on Maki's sense of vigilance. He had a good grasp of her personality and understood that she was a cautious woman. His subtle actions, from his subordinate brazen presence to the little prank with the poisoned food, had kept her on edge. Being cautious was wise, but excessive caution led to paranoia. When someone became paranoid, they overanalyzed even the simplest things. However, Raymond aimed for this. This heightened state of awareness caused her to absorb even the smallest details of Raymond's words and actions, including his slightest change of expression. Words that might have seemed carefree and insignificant to others became important clues in Maki's perspective. She was then unconsciously directed to connect the dots, piecing together information that had been bothering her for a while, especially the rumors about the auction she heard from Hisoka a while ago. Little did she know, Raymond was the very source of the information she was piecing together. Poor girl. Sekijuro had grown accustomed to Raymond's way of doing things, recognizing the precision with which he executed each move. However, Sin was different. Even though Sin didn't show it outwardly, he was taken aback. He had mostly seen Raymond either nonchalant or sporting his iconic smirk. Sin glanced at Raymond's expression, which slowly morphed back to the familiar nonchalance he was accustomed to. He couldn't help but think, as expected of Master, you truly are different. This display of calculated manipulation was new to him. Through these subtle gestures, Raymond could convey his messages to Maki without uttering anything too specific that might lead to her suspicion. She had become so attuned to his cues that she absorbed every detail he offered without question. Raymond's actions were flawless to her, and she responded accordingly. Do you think she got it, Master? Sekijuro's question broke the silence. She's smart, she should be. Raymond replied with confidence lacing in his words. He had gone to such lengths for her to connect all the information in her hands. Obviously, she had no other choice. Besides, even though it had been years, Raymond knew Maki would remember the disdain with which he referred to the Mafia as thugs. Do you not want to talk with her? Raymond asked as he turned to Sekijuro, who shook his head stoically. He offered a slight bow as he responded, my goal was achieved long ago. I no longer harbor personal sentiments. What holds significance for me now is to serve you dutifully and assist you in attaining your desired objectives, Master. You can't follow his footsteps, Sin. You're still young, and you gotta live a little. Raymond shook his head in response to this as he turned to Sin. Understood, Master, Sin responded with a respectful bow. All right. Raymond couldn't help but smile wryly, knowing Sin didn't fully understand his words. His loyal followers who formed his core team held a special place in Raymond's heart. He valued them greatly and would go to great lengths, even war, to avenge their deaths. If it hadn't been Albert that Illumi had killed not long ago, Raymond's response wouldn't have been so merciful. Glancing back to where Maki's figure gradually faded from view, these thieves are now officially invited. It's about time we secured your new city. Your new city held immense significance in Raymond's grand scheme. As the hub of the United States of Suherta, seizing control of it would set off a chain reaction that would allow him to connect all the dots within the states that he had planted to secure his influence throughout the states. And those thugs? Raymond's voice was a low, chilling murmur. His crimson eyes gleamed with a fierce resolve as he continued, it's about time they retired. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more, neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more, for the former things have passed away. Sekijuro and Sin's eyes reflected Raymond's tone, gleaming with the same cold intensity as they focused on the direction Maki had vanished. In the slum area, Maki hastened her pace, using the fastest route out of the country. However, she suddenly sensed a faint presence lurking nearby. Maki frowned as she turned towards the darkened alleyway, get out. Recognizing he had been discovered, a figure emerged slowly from the alley's shadows. The person was missing an arm and carried a storage container, seemingly intent on preserving its contents. You. Maki's eyes widened in recognition as she beheld the unexpected visitor. Realizing the person before her hadn't bothered concealing their presence, Maki raised her guard. Illumi Zalik, what do you want? Illumi's gaze lingered on the pink-haired Phantom Troop member, his mind drifting back to Raymond's letter to their family. In Raymond's message, among other things, he seemed to have anticipated their struggle to find someone capable of reattaching Illumi's arm. He provided them with precise coordinates and the exact time when this individual would be available. Illumi couldn't comprehend how Raymond had predicted such timing. Yet, the accuracy of his predictions was undeniable, serving as evidence that nothing escaped Raymond's watchful gaze in the country. The realization sent a shiver down Illumi's spine. "I want to commission you for something," Illumi declared, opening the briefcase he held in his hand. Chapter 68, Chapter 65, Wrapping Things Up. A few days later, Sin made his way toward the fight registration booth on the 200th floor, where the clerk greeted him. "Hello there, is there anything I can help you with?" she inquired. "Yes, please. I would like to challenge a floor master." The clerk's sleepy eyes widened slightly in surprise before she nodded. "Ah, I see. Which floor master would you like to challenge?" "I would like to challenge the 250th floor master." Sin's expression remained stoic, but a fierce determination burned in his eyes. Yes, we can schedule it immediately. We will let you know once the 250th floor master accepts the challenge." The clerk's surprise was evident, considering the recent change in the 250th floor master. Sin's brow furrowed as he remembered Raymond's insistence on settling matters today. However, before the clerk could respond, a voice interrupted them. "I accept the challenge. Can you schedule it for today?" Sin turned towards the source and bowed respectfully as he greeted, "Master, I apologize the inconvenience I have brought upon you." "That's fine, it's the rule here," Raymond remarked while casually shrugging his shoulders. Sakujiro stood silently beside him, nodding at Sin to proceed. Sin acknowledged Sakujiro's gesture with a nod before turning to the clerk. "Could you arrange that now?" Well, technically it's feasible since both parties have consented." "Do you have a preferred time for the bout?" "Schedule it for this afternoon at 2 p.m., Sin replied with a firm nod. The clerk glanced at Raymond, but he swiftly intervened. "I agree with him." "Ah? In that case, your duel will be scheduled for this afternoon at 2 p.m. Please ensure that both of you are in peak condition and prepared for combat. Additionally, be sure to arrive 1 hour prior to the designated time," the clerk instructed. Both Sin and Raymond nodded in acknowledgement before departing. In that afternoon, the Heavens Arena buzzed with excitement as spectators crowded around, eager to witness the spectacle unfolding in the 200th match. Today, Castro had stepped up to the challenge once again, determined to face Hisoka. It was a rematch, a chance for redemption, for revenge. Kikik. Hisoka's laughter echoed lightly through the arena, filled with anticipation as he relished the opportunity to claim yet another victory. To him, Castro was merely another opponent unworthy of his full attention. The crowd was still excited to see another fight as they slowly filled up the arena, and both fighters were in the middle of the arena. "I'm grateful, Hisoka. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be as strong as I am today." Castro spoke with genuine appreciation, reminiscing about his defeat at Hisoka's hands years ago. Determined to reclaim his honor, Castro dedicated himself to rigorous training, honing his nin until he felt confident to face Hisoka once more. "And I haven't even revealed my hidden card yet. This time, I'll unleash my true abilities upon the world. You won't even live to recount the tale, Hisoka." As he locked eyes with Hisoka, who smiled casually in return, Castro's thoughts turned dark. Hisoka remained silent, merely nodding in response. He was completely uninterested, as his focus was somewhere else. Witnessing this, Castro furrowed his brow, but before he could question it, the referee's call signaled the commencement of the battle. In a flash, Hisoka vanished from Castro's view, sending a jolt of shock through him. "Whoa! Hisoka starts off with an impressive display of speed," the announcer exclaimed, his excitement evident. Yet, Castro proved himself not to be underestimated as he swiftly leaped backward and created space between them. "Damn it, lost my focus!" Castro cursed under his breath, frustrated that his concentration had been disrupted. Taking advantage of the opening, Hisoka produced a deck of cards and hurled them toward Castro, who was mid-air. Gritting his teeth, Castro instinctively raised his hand to shield his vital areas. The cards pierced through his flesh, embedding themselves deeply, causing a numbing pain to shoot through his hand. Despite his efforts, as Castro nearly touched down the ground, Hisoka vanished once more, reappearing with lightning speed beside him. With a swift, precise kick, Hisoka caught Castro off guard, sending a sharp pain shooting through his head. The force of the blow propelled Castro through the air, crashing into the arena wall below the astonished audience. Whoa! What just happened? Hisoka's won already. The announcer and the crowd erupted in disbelief, stunned by Castro's swift defeat. The referee wasted no time in declaring Hisoka the victor, bringing the short but intense battle to an unexpected end. Gon and Killua stood in shock, their eyes wide with disbelief at the outcome of the match. Killua was taken aback. He had never witnessed Hisoka's true strength in a fight before. This clown, he's actually this powerful. He remembered feeling uneasy about Hisoka's nen when they encountered him on their way to the 200th floor a month ago. But seeing him fight like this made Killua reassess his opinion of Hisoka. On the other hand, Gon was surprised to witness Hisoka's sudden aggression. He knew Hisoka was not the type to be aggressive. Except when he fought Raymond, he's never been this aggressive, Gon thought. It seemed like Hisoka was in a hurry. This made him wondering about the reason for Hisoka's sudden urgency. Returning to Hisoka, he strolled down the corridor, raising an eyebrow when he spotted Raymond heading towards the elevator. Chuckling to himself, he then opened up his mouth, "Kakik, you won't have to wait long. I'll be challenging you after a few more victories." "What the hell are you on about?" Raymond tilted his head in confusion, as Hisoka suddenly addressed him. Shaking his head at the sight of Hisoka's unsettling gaze, Raymond retorted, "You may enjoy putting on a show, but I'm afraid your circus act ends here." Confusion flashed across Hisoka's face in response. However, Hisoka's confusion was quickly dispelled as Raymond disappeared into the elevator. A booming announcement echoed throughout the Heavens Arena, capturing everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, today's afternoon brings us a special event. We'll witness another thrilling showdown between a floor master and a challenger." Hisoka's initial excitement shifted to bewilderment as he blinked in surprise. The newly appointed floor master, Raymond Celestia, will face off against Sin, a rising challenger. Will Raymond defend his title and glory, or will Sin snatch it away? His expression turned lifeless as his mind raced, searching for an answer for this kind of situation as his eyes widened in a realization. Hisoka then shook his head before ascending to the arena, hoping his fears were unfounded. However, Hisoka's expression grew increasingly lifeless as he witnessed the battle unfold. He hoped a bit that Raymond would keep his title, only to watch Raymond forfeit the match after an exchange of some blows. Sitting in silence, Hisoka rested his chin in his hand, feeling his motivation fleeting away. Chapter 69, Chapter 66, Raymond vs. Sin. "Seems like I need to be prepared this time." Raymond addressed Sin, who stood before him. Sin nodded in acknowledgement, his muscles tensing as he prepared himself. Meeting Raymond's gaze, he murmured, "I'll show you how much I've improved this time, Master." It was well known that Raymond made it a habit to spar with newcomers in the Celestial Force. What stood out was that Raymond seldom fought in such a spar after just a few rounds. Being perceptive, Sin noticed that in those early rounds, Raymond seemed to be grappling with the unique fighting techniques employed by members of the Celestial Force. As the matches progressed, it became clear that Raymond was getting the hang of it. It was as if he had effortlessly mastered their techniques, making them seem predictable and easy to counter. Like others who were challenged by Raymond, Sin felt the sting of defeat. This fueled a determination within himself. His goal was that there would be a day Raymond would once again challenge him of his own volition. "I'll mix up my hatsu this time. That should catch him off guard." Sin thought to himself, determination shining in his eyes. Whoa! He just defeated the 250th floor, right? Yet he was immediately challenged. Well, I can understand why, though. Excited murmurs rippled through the crowd as they observed the fighters in the arena, pointing and whispering to one another. Despite Raymond's recent victory against Cassandra and some unsettling aspects of his battle, especially the arena that crumbled into dust. With no insight into what was happening within Cassandra's ability, uncertainty surrounded Raymond's true strength. And many were still doubtful about his qualification as the 250th floor master. His victory, although, was a quick and decisive one. It appeared too straightforward for some to consider him truly formidable. Wow, it's starting soon. Gon, Killua, and Zushi made their way into the crowd, settling into vacant seats. They were eager to watch the fight, knowing Sin's reputation as a skilled combatant. Seeing Raymond face off against such a formidable opponent was sure to be exciting, especially with his martial arts skills on display. Wing trailed behind, casting a skeptical glance at Raymond and Sin. He had seen what was happening a while back and couldn't shake the feeling that there was a connection between Sin and Raymond. That Sin guy should be Celestia's subordinate. The looming question in his mind was why they were now set to engage in a battle. Oh? Hisoka's also watching. Gon glanced to the side, spotting Hisoka's deadpan expression as he observed the arena. Noticing such an expression on Hisoka's face, Gon tilted his head in confusion. Scratching his head, Gon muttered, he was aggressive just moments ago, but now he seems lifeless somehow. Forget it. Let's focus on the battle. We have no circus around here. Killua shrugged, his eyes sparking with interest. He knew Raymond was strong, but he had only heard about his fights from others. This would be his first time witnessing Raymond's fight firsthand. Back in the arena, the referee looked at both fighters as he gestured for them to get ready as he stood right in the middle. Seeing them were in position, his eyes sharpened as he raised his hand, let the battle begin. Come, show me what you've got, Sin. Raymond's voice echoed in a hint of amusement as Sin's figure suddenly rushed toward him. Oh! Sin's charging straight at Raymond. What aggression, what excitement! The announcer's voice boomed through the arena, echoing the sentiments of the roaring crowd as they cheered on the beginning of the battle. Sin moved swiftly and erratically across the arena, his figure blurring with each sudden shift. In an instant, he reappeared right in front of Raymond, launching a powerful roundhouse kick aimed directly at Raymond's head. But to everyone's surprise, Raymond didn't dodge the attack. Instead, he leaped upward, meeting Sin mid-air. The crowd gasped as the two clashed, their movements fast and intense. What the fuck? The announcer blurted out, breaking the silence with an unintended profanity. Then, just as quickly as he had appeared, Sin vanished from sight. A split second later, a deafening thud echoed through the arena as Sin's kick struck the ground where Raymond had been standing moments before, cracking the surface open with a loud boom. The audience watched in awe as the fight unfolded before them, the intensity of the battle almost overwhelming their senses. I can't believe what I'm seeing. It seems like Sin's attack was just a distraction. The announcer shouted, marveling at the strategy unfolding before them. But Raymond saw through it and dodged the kick. What a move! The announcer stumbled over her words as she tried to describe the action. Sin keeps disappearing and reappearing. As Sin's figure vanished once more before reappearing by Raymond's side, the tension in the arena grew. Raymond sidestepped Sin's attack effortlessly, dodging the blow with ease. But just as Sin moved to block Raymond's counter-punch, he felt a sudden impact from his right side, sending him sprawling across the platform. Sin struggled to get back up, stunned by what had just happened. He watched as Raymond's figure seemed to blur and reappear on the opposite side of the arena. Whoa! Did Raymond just pull off the same move Sin did? Wow, they're like twins. The crowd's excitement reached a fever pitch as they reacted to the thrilling exchange in the arena. I see. I should have seen this coming. Sin muttered as he saw Raymond execute his technique with such ease. If Raymond could read his move like a book, he should also be able to use it. However, it doesn't matter. Sin's face twisted into a smirk as he enveloped his body in Nin. From his suit, he took out something and threw it to the ground as it exploded into a cloud of smoke that quickly filled the arena. What? Smoke? Oh, not this again. The crowd groaned in frustration, realizing they couldn't witness the thrilling battle unfolding before them. Raymond quickly caught on to Sin's tactic as he noticed Sin surrounding himself with his hatsu. Ah, he's trying to muffle the sound of his movements, Raymond realized. A smirk formed on Raymond's lips as he observed the smoke clouding his vision. That's pretty smart. But there's a flaw in your plan, Sin, Raymond pointed out, closing his eyes to concentrate. He relied on his senses, feeling for any subtle vibrations of Sin's movements on the ground. Raymond knew that despite his movement was now quiet, Sin would still have to move across the platform to attack. However, Raymond's senses heightened as he sensed something off. He quickly opened his eyes, their crimson glow intensified by his Nin. With this enhanced vision, Raymond saw that the entire platform was covered in Sin's energy as well. Ah, shit! You used to be so innocent. What changed you? Raymond muttered, feeling a twinge of disappointment. Sin's figure quietly materialized behind him, his gaze cold and determined. Chapter 70, Chapter 67, The Grand Display. I learned everything from your cunning-ass behavior. It took all his willpower to suppress the surge of emotions threatening to overwhelm him. Raymond's mutterings nearly threw Sin off his game, but he was able to remain focused, determined not to let his anger get the better of him. With a quick and decisive move, Sin seized the opportunity presented to him. He launched a flying kick from behind Raymond, catching him off guard. The impact sent Raymond hurtling through the platform of the arena, the force of the blow shrouded by the dissipating smoke. Whoa! Did Sin land a hit? The announcer exclaimed, her excitement palpable as she observed the unfolding spectacle. I couldn't see through the smoke. As the smoke cleared, Raymond's figure emerged, seemingly unaffected by the powerful blow. He regained his balance effortlessly, a satisfied smile playing on his lips as he turned to face Sin. With my current ability, there aren't many who could land a hit against me. You did well, Sin. Raymond silently acknowledged Sin's skill, realizing that he surpassed most others. Among the talented individuals in Celestial Force, Sin stood out as the best they had ever seen. Meanwhile, such a monster, Sin muttered under his breath as he witnessed Raymond's incredible reflexes. Even though Sin's kick had connected, Raymond somehow managed to adjust his position in such a small time frame and was able to mitigate the impact to a degree that seemed almost impossible. His eyes were locked on Raymond's figure as he swiftly threw another smoke bomb, the explosion enveloping the arena in a dense cloud of smoke once more. With his senses heightened, Sin could feel those glowing crimson eyes piercing through the haze. I guess it's fair that he used those eyes when I used my ability, Sin mused silently, acknowledging the balance of powers in their fierce confrontation. As the smoke obscured their surroundings, the tension in the air crackled with anticipation. The intensity of their battle caused the platform to shake and crack, adding to the chaos. Everyone could see the platform crumbling, yet there was no sound. Still, the impact sounds of Sin's attacks on Raymond were able to echo through the arena as it was only Sin's movement that was muffled by his hatsu. Whoa! The sounds are intense. What's happening up there? This should be one of the most thrilling fights in decades, right? The crowd buzzed with excitement while the announcer tried to spin the situation with professional commentary. As the smoke cleared, Sin emerged. It appeared that his supply of smoke bombs was running low. On the side, Raymond's glowing crimson eyes dimmed, his attention shifting to the crowd. I guess that's enough, Sin, Raymond said, his voice barely audible over the excited audience. Sin nodded, releasing his hatsu and disappearing from view as their battle raged on. With Sin's sound cue no longer concealed, the sounds of their fight filled the arena, heightening the spectators' excitement. The arena showed the scars of their intense battle, but Raymond and Sin fought on, their moves precise and calculated. Wow! What a fight! Holy crap! I think this is the best we've seen in Heaven's arena. The announcer exclaimed, watching Raymond and Sin take a moment's respite, both fighters battered but determined. However, I forfeited the battle. Raymond's words cut through the excitement, and the arena fell into a sudden silence. Wait! Did he just give up? It looks like it. Confusion swept through the crowd as they exchanged bewildered glances, all eyes fixed on Raymond's figure. What on fuck, Raymond? Are you fucking out of your mind? Go fight again, you crazy bastard! Give me back my excitement! The announcer's outburst echoed through the arena, leaving everyone stunned as profanity filled the arena. Ahem! This is unexpected. But let's move on. Allow me to present the new 250th floor master, Sin. Thankfully, her colleague quickly intervened, taking over the commentary to restore order as the referee declared Sin victory by default. With this, there should be no one foolish enough to carelessly challenge you, Raymond declared as he began to walk out of the crumbled arena. Sin nodded as his initial excitement faded. He clenched his fist silently. However, Raymond abruptly stopped in his tracks, turning back to face Sin. Still, I'm glad to see how much you've improved. We should spar again sometime. Sin's eyes widened in surprise, his dimmed pupils suddenly alight with excitement at Raymond's unexpected offer. That would be my pleasure, Master. He bowed deeply in response, his gratitude was evident. Raymond chuckled at Sin's reaction. All right, I'll go back to work, Raymond said casually before leaving Sin feeling renewed determination and purpose. Though Raymond could read Sin like a book. His earlier words were genuine, a well-deserved acknowledgement for the kid. From the start, their battle was merely a showcase to prove that Sin was no pushover. It served as a warning to any potential challengers, ensuring they wouldn't dare to underestimate him. This would save Sin time and allow him to attend to his other responsibilities later. Why would Raymond give up? Maybe he just didn't want the hassle of being the floor master like we do. Gon and Killua whispered, Zushi nodding along beside them. Wing shook his head, eyeing the wreckage of the arena. Despite the surprise, the kids seemed to enjoy the spectacle. They should have learned a lot from watching these fighters, he mused, smiling slightly. Amid their discussion, Gon saw Hisoka's complexion seemingly grow even more paler as he shook his head, might just be my imagination. Meanwhile, as Raymond and Sekujiro left Heaven's arena, Raymond's suit appeared clean again, as if nothing had happened inside. He turned to a girl with purple hair and said, "I didn't know you could create illusions like that, Cassandra." "Humph, making simple illusions is easy, doesn't take much effort," she grumbled, annoyed at being disturbed for something so minor. Cassandra's ability was complex when it came to creating attack-based illusions since it had to follow a certain set of rules. However, her base ability was still illusion creation, and creating a torn suit was too simple. Raymond shook his head and signaled for his men to escort Cassandra back to her residence. She was now a member of the Celestial Force, as she was quite a simple girl who wanted wealth and comfortable sleep. "Quite a unique character, wouldn't you say?" Raymond remarked, idly swirling a cup of water in his hand as Sekujiro navigated the bustling streets. "She's certainly one of a kind," Sekujiro nodded in agreement. He then noticed Raymond's thoughtful expression as he asked, "Something bothering you, Master?" Raymond's attention shifted to the cup in his hand. "Yeah, this cup just reminded me of something. His stuff in this city was done." Still, after his little reunion with Maki, he couldn't help but feel nostalgic. These triggered memories of their previous encounter. With a subtle flick of his fingers, he channeled his nen into the cup. Chapter 71, Chapter 68, Flashback and Nen Category. 5 years ago. Raymond stood in the spacious space of his office. Behind his desk, a large window offered a view of the bustling cityscape below, but his attention was fixed on the setup before him. In front of him lay a sturdy wooden table, its surface pristine save for a single leaf placed delicately atop a cup of water with a container filled with water rested nearby. With a steadying breath, Raymond gripped the cup in his hand, the cool touch of ceramic grounding him in the present. "Let's see if something changed this time," he muttered. Raymond had been mulling over his own specialized nen technique, known as Hatsu, for quite some time now. It had been a while since he last attempted the water divination technique to gauge his nen compatibility. So, why did he need to do it again? Well, he had discovered that he could channel his nen into his eyes, enhancing his perception and speeding up his thoughts. And upon usage, his eyes would glow with a darker shade of red. Raymond was certain that his eyes was a Hatsu that set him apart from others. But this newfound ability came at a cost, a heavy toll on both his body and mind. That's why he constantly pushed his physical limits and practiced mental discipline. He needed to ensure that he could comfortably utilize his eyes in prolonged battles, should such a situation arise. Raymond took a deep breath as he focused his thoughts, channeling the essence of his being into the cup. The energy of his nen, that elusive force that defined his existence, flowed through him and into the water below. According to the known principles, different alterations in the water indicated distinct nen categories. If the volume of the water shifted, it meant he was likely an enhancer. If the taste changed, that hinted at being a transmuter. A alteration in the water's color suggested an emitter. The appearance of impurities signaled a conjurer. And if the leaf on the water's surface moved, he would be classified as a manipulator. Yet, as Raymond focused, the color of the water shifted, darkening into a deeper shade of red, matching the glow in his eyes. "It's still the same, hey?" Confusion creased his brow. The result of the water divination remained unchanged, mirroring the outcome of his previous attempts. Was he a conjurer or an emitter in this case? Raymond channeled his nen into his eyes, intensifying the crimson hue until it matched the color of the water in the cup. As he scrutinized his reflection, he murmured, "This is definitely not an ability of a conjurer and emitter." This only deepened his confusion over his nen compatibility, especially since he knew instinctively that his ability wasn't complete yet. These eyes, which he called the gaze of the sovereign, was definitely just a part of his specialized nen technique. Raymond furrowed his brow as he tried the water divination technique once more, this time with a new cup. Reflecting on his limited knowledge of this familiar world, Raymond knew he needed to bridge the gap between what he knew and what he needed to learn. Since he only had the rough sketch about how the plot goes in the original canon, Raymond had set up an extensive information network across the country, and possibly beyond to fill in the blanks. This network helped him gather intelligence, and possibly use it to combine it with his limited knowledge. Raymond felt a sense of inadequacy as he grappled with the complexities of advanced nen techniques. He couldn't help but recall the awe-inspiring abilities of renowned nen users like Crollo Lucifer, whose Hatsu could steal another's powers, a formidable skill with strict rules but still overwhelmingly powerful. Then there was Isaac Netaro's 100-type Guanyin Bodhisattva, a mighty force unleashed in the battle against the Ant King, Miruem. Although unable to best Miruem, Netaro was able to make it by deploying a weapon of mass destruction, sacrificing himself to vanquish the Ant King. And the enigmatic Aluka's wish-granting ability? A power both terrifying and incomprehensible, seeming to defy the laws of reality. While these abilities left a strong impression on him, Raymond lacked the in-depth understanding of their complexities, making him unable to understand how to create his own Hatsu since he himself was still unsure of his non-compatibility. In contrast, the straightforward abilities of Gon and Killua seemed worlds apart from his own situation. Kurapika's situation might give him an insight since his nin techniques were known for their complexity and meticulous design, governed by rules of his own making. But the problem was, Raymond couldn't decide the rule of his ability without even knowing his ability yet. And Kurapika was probably far younger than he was. Raymond had already on his 4th cups of water without realizing it, and he let out a sigh of weariness. He stopped using his nin to focus on the cup as he felt his vision blurring, a sign that he had been too absorbed in his task and was on the verge of passing out. Shaking his head, he muttered, "Seems like I got carried away." His hand shook as he moved to place the cup on the table with the others. Bam! However, the door suddenly burst open as Luke barged in, yelling, "Raymond, we need to have a meeting ASAP." The force of the slam almost caused Raymond to lose his grip on the cup, making the water inside tremble. With a quick recovery, he managed to steady the cup and set it down on the table. "Is it about the Sam?" Raymond began, but his words were cut short as he saw something incredible. His eyes widened in shock as he watched a droplet of water fall into the container of pure water. Yet, instead of mixing harmlessly, the droplet seemed to be devouring the rest of the clean water, its color spreading like ink in water. No, it wasn't devouring. It was conquering the rest of the water. Raymond's thoughts raced as he processed the water's unexpected reaction. The unprecedented response from the water baffled him, especially considering he hadn't actively channeled his nin into it. It dawned on him that his ability didn't fit neatly into the categories of emitter or conjurer. He couldn't help but smirk as he murmured, "So, I'm a specialist, hey." Meanwhile, Luke, initially confused by Raymond's sudden silence, sighed and sank into the sofa. "Yeah, it's about Sam's song. We need to figure out where to build our factory soon." Chapter 72, Chapter 69, Better Place. "Raymond? Hey, are you with us?" Luke's exasperated tone cut through Raymond's reverie, bringing him back to the present. He blinked, refocusing his attention on Luke. "Sorry about that," Raymond said as he shook off his distracting thoughts. "Call everyone together. We've got a meeting in an hour." "Got it," Luke replied, rolling his eyes as he set about his task. An hour passed, and Raymond and Luke navigated the corridor with a vigilant bodyguard at their side, finally reaching the meeting room. Luke shot Raymond a puzzled glance, noting the distant look in his eyes that seemed to recur. Shrugging off the odd behavior, Luke muttered, "Whatever." Despite Raymond's seemingly lost in his thoughts, Luke had confidence in the kid. "The kid's a genius anyway," he muttered to himself, knowing Raymond would still be fully engaged in the upcoming meeting. As Raymond and Luke entered the room, they were greeted by the sight of the key figures from Celestia Consortium, Celestial Force, and the higher UPS from Samsung already gathered. A sense of reverence filled the air as the attendees rose from their seats, offering respectful bows to Raymond. Raymond acknowledged their gestures with a nod, his expression composed as he took his place in the middle seat at the head of the room reserved for the owner of the Celestia Consortium. Beside him, Luke settled into the seat designated for the figurehead of Celestial Force, prepared to fulfill his duties. With the head figures now seated, the rest of the attendees followed suit, straightening their postures before taking their seats. As Raymond glanced around the room, a hush settled over the familiar faces gathered there. These were individuals who had once held prominent positions but had since stepped down from public view. Though officially replaced by new figures, they still retained the true power within the company. The newcomers now occupying their former roles were mere puppets, serving as a front for public perception. In truth, it was these individuals before Raymond who wielded the authority and influence that truly mattered within the organization. Luke was similar. He had also retired from active duty, claiming he was wealthy enough to live comfortably for the rest of his days. However, due to a lack of competent candidates, he reluctantly assumed the role of chairman of Celestial Force. "Chairman Lee, could you update us on the situation?" Raymond addressed Li Song, who nodded in acknowledgement. Li signaled to his secretary to distribute a folder containing relevant information to the key figures present. Thank you, Raymond said, taking the folder and carefully examining its contents, his brow furrowing in concentration. As you're all aware, Song began, his brow furrowing with concern, there have been some recent regulatory changes with the new Ministry of Economics stepping in. They may seem minor at first glance. He paused, shaking his head, continuing, but given our company's expansion plans, these seemingly small adjustments are proving quite costly for us financially. Fatso lu, hey. Luke clicked his tongue as he muttered under his breath. Song nodded solemnly, confirming Luke's suspicion, he's not exactly on our side, especially since we've thrown our support behind their opposition in the last campaign. We don't take sides, Raymond asserted, cutting through the tension in the room. All eyes turned to him as he shook his head. In politics, as businessmen, we align ourselves with the winner. A heavy silence descended upon the room, Raymond observing their stunned reactions with a shake of his head. These folks are too innocent for the harsh realities of modern politics, he thought to himself. Still, he couldn't help but notice that even in the Republic of Padokia, they were overly dependent on the government, which didn't bode well for a multinational company like theirs. It should be the government relying on them, not the other way around. I need to assert control over the political landscape faster, Raymond resolved silently as he glanced at Song. So this new regulation is squeezing our profit margins, hey? Raymond remarked, prompting Song to nod in agreement. Exactly. In that case, let's set up our factory somewhere else. Yes, that's the plan, Song confirmed, signaling his secretary to activate the monitor across the room. The screen illuminated, displaying a world map with various countries marked and potential locations strategically chosen for constructing their new factory. Song cleared his throat, drawing attention to the Mimbo Republic, situated next to their own country. We've already set up some factories there, but expanding further could cause conflicts of interest, he explained. Raymond listened intently as Song moved on to discuss Japan, a small island nation where local competition made it difficult for them to expand their operations. A spark of determination flashed in Raymond's eyes as he pondered his next move. I'll need to find another way to break into the Japan market, he thought, already brainstorming ideas. Song then mentioned the Kyokanyu Kingdom as a potential site for a new factory. Despite the technical feasibility, Raymond noted Song's concern about the profit margins in that region. Luke nodded in agreement, they do put a heavy tax on foreign companies. Raymond nodded along while processing the information and silently plotting his strategy for expansion. Song then pointed towards the Asia continent. We already have a significant presence in Asia, so building a factory there would be our best option. However, we need to consider the Federation of Okima's reaction since we're competitors in the same industry. What about the United States of Suharta? Luke chimed in, pointing to the Eurbia continent. Song shook his head, shipping our goods from there would be costly, given the Tendon's influence in the states. Our best bet for now is to focus on the Asia continent and the Bijirasi Union. Still, Asia seems like the most practical choice as shipping from Bijirasi would introduce unnecessary delays and risks. Luke let out a weary sigh, scratching his head, it's going to cost us, but probably less than staying put, right? Turning to Raymond, Luke addressed him directly. So, boss, what's your call? The ball's in your court. All eyes turned to Raymond as he tapped his fingers thoughtfully on the table. The room fell silent, knowing that Raymond was carefully considering the best course of action for their company's future. A place where we can build without breaking the bank, with lower taxes and bigger profit margins, Raymond murmured, his eyes lighting up with sudden realization. There's a better option, he declared confidently. A better option? Luke and Song exchanged puzzled glances. Raymond's expression morphed into a sly smirk as he continued, ever heard of a little place called Meteor City? Chapter 73, Chapter 70, Meteor City. A few days later. So, we're a homeless now? Is this really our plan? Luke's voice dripped with frustration as he glanced over at Raymond, whose appearance was now disheveled. Raymond's clothes were torn, and dirt smeared his face, yet he seemed oddly unfazed by his appearance. He didn't even bother wearing shoes, yet he carried himself with the same confidence as always. How can you even feel okay looking like that? Looking at Raymond's disheveled appearance, resembling that of a beggar, Luke couldn't help but sigh in exasperation. Originally skeptical about Raymond's proposal to consider Meteor City as a potential factory site, Luke and Song had their doubts. After all, Meteor City was notorious for being a lawless, mafia-dominated wasteland. However, Raymond argued that despite its reputation, building a factory in Meteor City could offer them the highest profit margins if they were able to establish themselves there. The location tucked away in the eastern part of the Eurbia continent, a spot known only to a few. Despite its secrecy, it held significance, being close to both the sea and the dense forest. Although it remained hidden from the general public, it wasn't completely isolated. Smugglers, human traffickers, and other criminals often frequented the area due to its remote location and accessibility to the road network. The prospect was tempting, and after much deliberation, Song and Luke found themselves intrigued. Although they might have to need some time for this, if they were able to get a piece of land, the benefits would be higher than the rest of their current options. So, they made the decision to send a small team to Meteor City to gather first-hand information. To Luke's surprise, he found himself among the group, dressed in tattered clothing to blend in with the locals. Accompanying Raymond, Luke and 3 others ventured into the city. The expressions on their faces mirrored Luke's apprehension. "I've heard they're not too fond of outsiders. You think we'll be safe?" Luke voiced his concern, scratching at his skin uncomfortably. Raymond shook his head, "We won't know until we're there." But he was certain of one thing. The homeless don't hate each other. "You're kidding, right?" Luke halted abruptly, staring at Raymond incredulously. Their companions shared similar expressions of disbelief. Raymond merely shrugged, his demeanor casual, "Time's ticking, folks. We can't afford to waste any more." With resigned sighs, the group followed Raymond. As they entered the small town, they were met with a sight of rundown buildings scattered across the area. Despite its size, the town seemed desolate, with empty spaces littered with garbage between the dilapidated structures. The buildings were in a sorry state, with wide gaps separating them, and some appeared on the verge of collapse. The rooftops were particularly worse for wear, many of them broken or missing entirely. Among the ruins, they spotted people with disheveled appearances, who appeared to be making do with makeshift shelters constructed from whatever materials they could find, including plastic bags. "Forget about building anything here. I doubt we could even last a week here," Luke commented, surveying the bleak surroundings. Raymond understood Luke's sentiment as he took in the deteriorating cityscape. The dilapidated buildings and litter-strewn streets painted a grim picture. "Oh! More newcomers!" Suddenly, a youthful voice broke the silence. They turned to see a teenager, no more than 14, with dark hair and striking purple eyes. "Hey there, newcomers! I'm Taka. Welcome to the neighborhood," he greeted with a cheerful smile. Taka introduced himself, his gaze scanning Raymond and his companions with curiosity. "So, how long have you guys been living on the streets?" "Not too long," Luke replied, a hint of irritation in his voice. Taka chuckled and stepped closer, "No worries. Welcome to Meteor City. It may not look like much, but it's our home now." Raymond's eyes gleamed at these words. Seemed like Meteor City had a steady flow of people coming. Yet, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The air grew tense, and Raymond sensed unseen eyes on them. Silently, he observed Taka, letting Luke take the lead in conversation. You're right," Luke muttered before introducing himself and the rest of the group to Taka. Taka's demeanor suddenly shifted as he talked about the general situation of living in Meteor City. His eyes narrowed with seriousness. "Watch your backs here. Outsiders sometimes come to snatch people for organ trafficking." "Seriously? This place is dangerous, then?" Luke's expression darkened in alarm. Taka nodded as his figure seemed to be visibly relieved for some reason. He rubbed the back of his head with a nervous laugh. "It's not uncommon, but as long as you stick together, you'll be okay." Raymond saw that Taka seemed to be visibly relieved as he sensed a newfound tranquility settling over their surroundings. A small smile tugged at Raymond's lips as he silently thought, "Surprisingly enough, it seems like we've been welcomed here." Taka gestured towards a lone building amidst a heap of garbage. "There should be some room near that building." "But really, you can pick any spot you like," Taka added with a shrug. "We don't own anything around here." I suppose we should explore our options first." "No, let's settle down there," Luke began, but Raymond interjected firmly. Luke turned to Raymond, his eyebrows raised in silent inquiry, silently asking, "Are you sure about this?" Despite knowing it might not be the most pleasant choice, Raymond nodded in affirmation. Taka regarded Raymond with a new look, recognizing him as the group's leader. He chuckled, well, it's not my concern anyway. Anyway, if you have any questions, feel free to look me up. I'm over on the east side of town, Taka announced before bidding farewell. Well, that's me done for now. I'll catch you guys later. See ya, Luke called out as Taka turned to leave. Just as Taka took a step forward, he stumbled, his eyes widening in alarm. Oh, crap! Before he could fall, a figure swiftly appeared by his side and caught him just in time. You all right there, kid? Raymond asked, steadying Taka with a firm grip. Taka nodded gratefully, phew. Thanks for saving me there. I owe you one, Anaki. After the incident, Taka dusted himself off, offering a nod of gratitude to Raymond and his companions before taking his leave. Observing Taka's departure, Luke shot Raymond a curious glance. You're just gonna let that go? Raymond remained silent, his gaze fixed on Taka's retreating figure. He turned to Luke as he smirked before taking out a worn pouch, saying, he took mine, I took his. I knew it, you nasty bastard. Luke shrugged, knowing Raymond well enough to understand that he wouldn't tolerate any losses. As Taka retreated to a secluded corner, his innocent facade melted away, replaced by a sly smirk. Casting wary glances around him, he ducked into a simple shelter made from discarded clothing. They bought it completely. Let's see what's inside this pouch, he muttered, his chuckle laced with mischief as he carefully opened the stolen pouch, hoping to find some food. Did you steal again? Another child, similar in appearance with dark hair and brown eyes, emerged from the shelter. Shut up, Sin. Hehe, I bet it's food this time, I swear to God. Chapter 74, Chapter 71, Going back for his pouch. Taka's eyes sparkled with anticipation as he examined the sizable pouch in his hand. With careful fingers, he began to unzip it, revealing a sleek container inside. Whoa, where did this come from? He wondered aloud, amazed at the unexpected find. It seemed too fancy for a homeless person to possess. Excitement coursed through him as he eagerly opened the container, hoping for something valuable inside. But as he peered into its depths, his eyes widened in astonishment. Sin furrowed his brow in confusion as he observed Taka's sudden silence. What's going on, Taka? He asked, tilting his head confusedly. Just take a look, Taka replied with an annoyed sigh, his lips twitching with speechlessness as he placed the opened container before Sin. What is it? Sin leaned in closer, extending his hand towards the container. Can't you see it up close? Is your vision getting worse, Sin? Taka inquired, concern lacing his voice. Sin's eyesight had been deteriorating for years, a fact that weighed heavily on both of them. Yet, stranded in Meteor City with no access to medical care, there was little they could do to alleviate his condition. Yeah, everything's a bit blurry, Sin admitted with a casual shrug. Taka's heart sank at the confession. Sin was his only family in the city, their bond as strong as siblings despite their uncertain origins. As Sin tentatively reached out to touch the container, his eyes widened in surprise. A chopstick. That's right, god damn it. Fucking useless. Taka cursed, frustration evident in his voice. Why would Anaki bring something like this? Anaki? Who's that? Sin's frown deepened as he turned to Taka. Taka immediately looked away, avoiding Sin's gaze as he scratched his head. He's just a new guy, he mumbled evasively. Are you doing that risky job again? Sin's frown deepened as he made the connection. Taka grumbled in response, so what? It's not that dangerous. What if these newcomers are human traffickers? Sin countered, his worry evident. All right, calm down. Taka took a step back, settling onto the grimy floor with a sigh. Besides, the old-timers are there. And more importantly. His smirk faded as he reached for his pouch, only to find it missing. Confusion flashed across his face as he muttered, the pay is good. Where the heck is my money? Taka erupted in frustration as he realized his pouch was gone. You lost your money? Sin asked incredulously. That's right. I had it in my pouch, and now it's gone. Taka replied, growing increasingly agitated. Sin shook his head disapprovingly, I told you to stop stealing. Now you know how it feels when someone takes your stuff, don't you? Okay, I understand, brother. Taka shook his head, his mind racing as he tried to retrace his steps and figure out where he might have lost his pouch. "It was there when I got paid for the job," he muttered to himself, recalling the moment when the old-timers had handed him his earnings. Then it hit him he hadn't gone anywhere else after that, immediately heading home. His eyes widened in realization. It has to be that crazy guy. Taka shouted angrily, his thoughts fixated on Raymond. "You know who did it?" Sin inquired, concern evident in his voice. "Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was that Anaki whose pouch I stole," Taka admitted reluctantly. He had never lost his pouch before and was certain he had secured it tightly. The only interaction he could recall was when he pretended to fall, and that's when Raymond was close enough to potentially snatch it. "Damn it, I knew he wasn't just an ordinary guy, but to think he's a fellow pickpocketer," Taka muttered, scratching his head in frustration. He regretted ignoring his instincts about getting involved with them in the first place. Sin sighed, settling down on the floor beside Taka. "It's okay, Taka. It's done, and they could be long gone by now. We still have some money left, we can buy a slice of bread for you," Sin suggested, trying to reassure his friend. "No way," Taka snapped, refusing to entertain the idea of giving up the stolen money. Taka knew that if they couldn't retrieve the money, they wouldn't have enough to buy something to eat for both of them. With Sin's condition, Taka couldn't bear the thought of him going hungry. "If I don't eat, he won't either," Taka thought to himself, understanding Sin's stubbornness. To ensure they both had enough to eat, Taka was determined to retrieve their stolen money, no matter what. "I know where they were staying. They couldn't have gone too far. I'll go and apologize, return their stuff," Taka declared, determination burning in his eyes as he rose to his feet. Carefully, he placed the chopstick back into the container and secured it inside the stolen pouch. "I'll come with you," Sin insisted, attempting to stand up, but Taka gently pushed him back down. "No, your vision is too blurry to walk properly. You should stay here," Taka reasoned, concern evident in his voice. "But," Sin began, wanting to express his desire not to be a burden to Taka. "No, Sin. I'm not asking, I'm telling you," Taka interrupted firmly, his tone leaving no room for argument. Sin sighed in concern, "Isn't it risky to confront them? They're adults, after all. I'll see if I can get some backup." Taka nodded thoughtfully. "Backup? Yeah, I'll ask Grandpa Jiro to accompany me," Taka explained. Sin furrowed his brow skeptically. Normally, he would have corrected Taka for referring to someone like Uncle Jiro as Grandpa, but now was not the time for such remarks. "Do you think Uncle Jiro will agree to come with you?" "Absolutely," Taka replied confidently. "Before I went out, you gotta sit in a better spot." Taka carefully guided Sin deeper into their shelter, where he settled him on a worn-down tire serving as a couch for them. However, he furrowed his brow in confusion as his eyes caught sight of a strap of rope lying on the back of the tire. "When did we get this rope?" Sin's expression immediately changed as his voice quivered. "Our rope? Oh, yeah, I've been using it to help me move around." Taka's eyes widened as he put the pieces together. With a knowing grin, he responded, "Ah, got it. If you can move around better, it'll put my mind at ease when I'm not around." Despite his blurred vision, Sin could sense the warmth emanating from the smiles on Taka's and his own lips as he clenched his fist tightly. "Okay, Taka, I'll work on moving around independently," Sin spoke, feeling his eyes stinging with unshed tears as he mustered a smile. "Sure thing. I'll be back soon with the money," Taka affirmed before exiting, leaving Sin alone. Feeling all alone again, Sin lowered his head as tears began streaming down his cheeks as he wept silently. "I don't want to burden him. Isn't it better if I just left?" he whispered to himself, unaware that just outside their shelter, Taka was leaning against the wall with tears trickling down his cheeks. Unable to bear hearing Sin's sorrowful cries, Taka wiped away his tears with his small, dirt-stained hands and vowed softly, "I'll find a way to get us out of this place, Sin. Just hold on a little longer."
Thanks for listening.